Enough stalling. It's time to read. We are chapter 963. So close to 1,000. Of Lord of the Mysteries. Volume... I was about to say volume 4. It's volume 5. What's up, man? I hope you guys are having a beautiful day. All right, I added our members right now. I don't know if I should call us bookworms. If you guys have any suggestions, you let me know. It doesn't auto-update, so I have to manually update it. But just... I don't know if I should leave members named as bookworms or something else. I was going to put gamers, but I don't think we're necessarily gamers on this channel. So I was like, I'll just put bookworms for now. But our honorific name, before I forget. Thank you. Thank you as always, guys. The reader who stalls for eternity. The tamer of beasts and dogs. The one who farms LOTM. Easy Geeky is here today to read another glorious chapter or more. No, we're good for a few hours of Lord of the Mysteries. All right, so if you guys are ready. Chapter 963 is called Problem with Intelligence. All right, chapter 963, Problem with Intelligence. According to what Leonard knew, amongst the major noble families of the Fourth Epoch's Tudor Empire, the Abraham family was ranked first. It was even stronger than the Amon family, who had the blasphemer. I forgot about that. Abraham family was ranked first. It was even stronger than the Amon family, who had the blasphemer. Now, of course, he couldn't be certain if the Amon family didn't have any members that it was all filled with the Son of God's avatars. Miss Magician is actually an important member of the Abraham family. Everyone here isn't to be trifled with. Is this what's called a gathering of protagonists? Leonard first, and then what's it called? Emlyn said the gathering of messiahs. Called a gathering of protagonists, knowing him. Yeah, I think that's a more fitting word. Leonard first sided before he made a self-depraving comment. Derek didn't say a word, nor did he make any connections. He seriously listened to Mr. World's description, as well as the conversation between the two ladies, the magician and the hermit, before keeping them at heart. To him, the other members were in the outside world. Regardless of what happened, it had little to do with him or the city of Silver. Only matters regarding the King of Angels was something to be concerned about. After all, be it the angel of fate Ouroboros, the dark angel Sasrir, the red angel Medici, they have left traces around the city of Silver. As for the angel of time Amon, he had personally visited before, bringing about inexplicable horror. After everything quieted down, Derek couldn't help but consider certain matters. Any mention of it will be known. How should I inform the chief about such matters? Or is it fine not saying if it's for the time being? I'll just mention the Amon is the son of the creator, that he has another brother who is of the same pathway as the dragon of imagination. If the city of Silver were to encounter an overwhelming disaster, would Adam be able to hear if I said his name? Can he enter the forsaken lands of gods? Maybe. With this in mind, Derek instantly felt somewhat ashamed. This was because in such situations, the honorific name he should chant was Mr. Fools. At this moment, the world spoke again. Although War Angel Medici has long perished, he isn't completely dead. The soul he left behind has fused with the souls of the ancestors of the two major families of the Sauron and Einhorn, forming an evil spirit. During the death of Instanguil, there were traces of its appearance. Klein had specially brought up this point to firstly pass this information to the Church of the Eremite via Leonard. Secondly, it was to remind the hanged man to take note. After all, he had been to Bansi twice, possibly embroiling himself with the Red Angel Evil Spirit's fate. That evil spirit was War Angel Medici. While Leonard was feeling alarmed, he was taken aback. He had just guessed that Adam wasn't the only big wig who had been present. Later, setting off from the towers of the War Angel and Angel Imagination, he suspected that the evil spirit was a king of angels in his former life, and such an evil spirit had been sent to the underworld without putting up any resistance under the influence of the Lux Siphon Charm. Old man's level was higher than I previously imagined. A little bit high. Random stream? Yeah, I figured I'd go live now, because I couldn't stream at the scheduled time. Since I was going to be out for a bit, and then I can come back before the episode drop. Yeah, I apologize. I'm sorry, guys. Old man's level is higher than I previously imagined. Yes, the evil spirit must have been weakened by Adam and perhaps even by Mr. Fool before Mam and Dally and I arrived. Otherwise, it's not an enemy we could have handled. Right? Wow, I can't read. Right? What was Adam doing back then? There wasn't any sign of him during the entire battle. Could it be that there was another figure at the level of the King of Angels holding back Adam? Leonard felt tumultuous waves swishing through his heart as he forgot to observe the reactions of the other members. War Angel Medici, he perished and became an evil spirit. Bantu was a place his descendants lived. He was one of the founders of the Rose Redemption. Oliver quickly linked up the pieces of information and learned many new things. The mural I saw in Bantu Harbor telegraph office must have been drawn by that evil spirit. The world Gurmit Sparrow had gotten me to head to Bantu Harbor to search for traces in order to grasp the terrifying evil spirit's location. It was to prevent his subsequent plans from being disrupted. Thankfully, I didn't destroy the mural, otherwise I might have caught the notice of the evil spirit. You deceived me thinking there was a discussion with Wiz. I know, no, he said Saturday. We rescheduled for Saturday, and I apologize. Well, and I know since we're always on really bad time zones, I know some of you guys are up in the middle of the night waiting. So I know. I do apologize for that. I apologize for not being consistent. That is my fault. While Oliver's sudden relief, he felt increasingly alert. He planned on getting the Blue Avenger to leave Banty Harbor and head for the northern front of the Sonia Sea to investigate the matter Mr. Fool had previously given him. Audrey, Ketley, and the other members listened attentively as they kept it in mind without making too many connections. This was because the matter of the world described containing information that mostly consisted of key and rich points, and lacking the additional experiences and knowledges, they were unable to expand on the matter. After sharing the information that everyone needed to take note of, the world chuckled hoarsely. That's about it. After a brief silence, Emlyn straightened his back and looked ahead. An important figure from my kind will arrive in Backland, and a meeting with me has been arranged. After a pause and seeing how no one responded, he cleared his throat and asked, how should I deal with him? Him, another angel. Leonard felt numb as he noticed something. Mr. Moon had mentioned the concept of his kind, and he had red eyes. Leonard was taken aback as he thought to himself, he's a sanguine. He figured it out right away. Sanguine, don't tell me he's Emlyn White from the Harvesters. He figured it out so quickly. He had been close to Clint's identity as a detective. Leonard couldn't help but look at the Moon's side profile and figure out a few more times. The more Leonard looked at him, the more familiar he had appeared. He was almost certain. Without any doubts, Emlyn noticed the star sizing him up, just as Audrey was surprised and excited to confirm that Mr. Star had suddenly realized he knew Mr. Moon. Did I say something wrong? That fellow, the Star, looked somewhat astonished. He knows me in the real world. Do I know him? A series of thoughts flashed through Emlyn's mind as he subconsciously sniffed, trying to catch the scent of the new member beside him. However, the gray fog ensured that he felt it. A detective at work? I feel like he's a really good detective. And Emlyn's probably never going to figure it out, right? As he surfed the area and waited for the hanged man, the hermit in the world, to provide him with analysis and suggestions, he tried hard to recall if he had met someone like the Star. Gradually, he felt a sense of familiarity, but he couldn't recall who it was to the superficial impression the person left on him. At this point, Audrey recalled another problem. Mr. World and Mr. Star know each other, and Mr. Star knows Mr. Moon. There's a lot of he knows, she knows. Then does Mr. World know Mr. Moon? She subconsciously sized up the person at the lower end of the long brown table, but she failed to read anything of use from the World German Sparrow. As for Olger, he turned to look at the Moon. After a few seconds of thought, he said with some deliberation, Mr. Fool just mentioned that the times are changing. Although the important members of the Sanguine might not know of the ins and outs at their levels, they will more or less sense something and make preparations. The reason that the important figure wishes to meet you is both a probing action and surveillance. You just need to act as you usually do, but there will subsequently be some tests and missions. As I imagine, a second test and a mission will begin. I wonder what revelation the ancestor has given. Emlyn nodded and said to the hanged man, thank you. With the question answered, Forrest, who had been holding back all this while, finally spoke. Mr. Moon, the intelligence you gave me regarding the abandoned ancient castle was highly problematic. There were two ancient raids, but in the underground area was a door. Sealed behind the door is a powerful corruptive power. As long as one enters the region where the ancient wraiths are, they will be corrupted. This, Emlyn frowned silently. He wasn't in range, and he instead felt that her description was completely right. If the person who had provided the intelligence knew that there were two ancient wraiths, he wouldn't have ignored the door. As a cultured and noble sanguine, Emlyn never wished for anyone to incur any losses or harm because of his mistakes. Imagine if they fucking died, man. I'd be so mad, dude. Oh, man. Because of mistakes and neglect, he was rather perturbed by this, as he thought and solemnly said, I will investigate the source and provide you with an answer. As Forrest had returned safely, she didn't mind it too much. She tearfully answered, indicating that she was awaiting the outcome. As for being saved by Mr. Fool, with it happening once a month or even twice a month, she had already lost count. She was prepared to do anything Mr. Fool instructed her to do in the future. After they finished their conversation, Audrey was somewhat concerned. She asked with curiosity, do you know what brought about the corruptive force? Forrest shook her head. I don't know. With Mr. Fool not sharing any information, and how she didn't have any resolve dire interest to exchange for the answer to the card of blasphemy, Audrey retracted her gaze and attentively listened to the conversation of the other members. After a while, the learning segment came to an end and the Terror Club drew to a closer. The members stood up and bowed at their existence at the end of the long bronze table to bid him farewell. This time, Leonardo didn't appear too slow. The dark red angel dissipated as he returned to the real world. In front of him was a red glove he hadn't worn. Are you on a sabbatical? Wait, what does that mean? I don't know what that means, Wiz. What's up, dude? At this moment, a slightly aged voice suddenly sounded in his mind. Whose dreams did you enter a moment ago? Hello, what's up, dude? Old man has woken up. Leonardo was first delighted before he heaved a sigh of relief. Oh, we're already done with the chapter. Wait, hold up. Let me finish the chapter. It's like a paragraph. He didn't immediately answer Palazzo Ross, and he deliberated over the answer. Wait, are you free right now? Or are you at work, Wiz? He didn't immediately answer Palat's. I'm mispronouncing my. I'm telling you, that's my Achilles heel, dude. He didn't immediately answer Palat's Raz as he deliberated over an answer. Say it is possible that at certain times Dwayne Dantes is a Zik Eggers who discussed using some practical item. After learning that Dwayne Dantes was shared identity, he began doubting Old Man's original theory. This is because this parasite had come to a conclusion based on different appearances and auras of Zik Eggers and Dwayne Dantes. Furthermore, not every one of Mr. Fool's Blessed looks identical to Dwayne Dantes, nor were every one of them beyond the seer pathway. Therefore, since a shared identity was needed, it meant that they wielded a mystical item or sealed artifact that allowed them to transform into someone else. Together with the ancient aura of being a blessed causing some interference, it wasn't impossible for an angel to make an error in its judgment. Palatzaros fell silent for 2 seconds before him saying, "You reminded me, a Zik Eggers does have a mask that allows him to transform into anyone?" Damn, dude. All right. Chapter 964, as I forget to do my timestamp again, so we're 10 minutes and 55 seconds in. We are reading chapter 964. It's called Medici's Cause of Death. The fuck? Okay. As expected, after confirming his hypothesis, Nard didn't harp on the matter as he returned to the topic at hand. Old man, didn't you ask whose dream I entered? Yes, on the day we sought the revenge against Inzigo, Amon's brother and the kings of angels appeared. In his mind, the slightly aged voice didn't immediately reply. After a few seconds, there was a sigh. It's just as expected. Matters related to 008 will often attract Adam. Thankfully, I choose to sleep ahead of time. He's like, I don't want to get involved. Leonard didn't have the time to ponder over Palatzaros' words as he instinctively cried out, "Old man, you said his name." Adam gave... Oh, wait. Yeah, he said his name. So wouldn't he know? Adam's gaze was about to be cast over or might have already landed on them. The slightly aged voice chuckled. You actually know about Adam's trait. However, me mentioning him doesn't matter. He will only imagine that someone else is talking about him. Ah, of course, there's no need for you to know too much. This will definitely make you occasionally think of it. Once that happens too frequently or at a close physical distance, Adam will only know of it just like 008. Furthermore, okay, or at a close physical distance. Okay, so it has a range. Adam will also know of it just like 008. Furthermore, 008's influence is limited to a huge city while Adam's is the entire world. What the fuck? Never mind. The entire fucking work. Maybe hope. I don't remember. Plus, I don't want to get him depressed, you know? Wait, what I miss? Okay, after stalling, now we're back. So Adam's range is the entire world. Look at that, just like that. Things easy. We're both Thorfinn for real. Shit, man. I haven't read the ending. I've been excited to read it. Wait, you know what? Hold it. I'm gonna pause one more time. Okay, and now I'm done stalling. Now the Scholar King shall stop stalling me. Now we are back to recording. So Adam's range is the entire world, while 008 is only a huge city. As horrifying as Amon, another form of horror. Leonard composed himself and forced himself to stop thinking about Adam as he ruminated over what Palatzaros had said. Suddenly, he nearly blurted out without suppressing his voice. Old man, didn't you sleep not because you were weak, but because you were afraid of encountering Amon's brother? Palatzaros cleared the story. It was a result of both reasons, but they don't contradict one another. After giving you the 2 warmths of time, my condition deteriorated again. Under such circumstances, how am I to deal with the king of angels and concealed my existence? I'm already old and feeble. There's no need for such development, so it's almost necessary for me to hide. Leonardo was momentarily lost for words as he said a few seconds. Amon and his brother should be older than you. The ancient sun god is an ancient god before the cataclysm. Without waiting for Palatzaros to reply, he heaved a sigh of relief. That is to say that because of your act of sealing yourself and sleeping, the king of angels didn't discover the problem with me. Palatzaros chuckled. No, it was discovered. It was discovered? Leonard's expression sank as he nearly looked around frantically. He suspected that Adam was sitting in some corner, silently listening to his conversation with Old Man. At this moment, Palatzaros added, you were very close to him. Do you think you can hide from a king of angels who has accumulated the spectator pathway uniqueness? So Adam just left him then. Besides, you likely cried out, old man, impolitely at the most critical moment. Oh, shit, he did say... What did he say? Old man, wake up? Leonardo was taken aback as he subconsciously answered, you heard it? He suspected that old man had heard him, but he deliberately chose to ignore him for fear of being discovered by Adam. No, Palat's slightly aged voice teased. I don't have to hear it to know what you would do. How can I be aware of what kind of person you are? Damn. Admits... I can't recommend 24 Brazil enough. The best race. But I'm excited. I'm also excited for 2026. Now that we have like a US team. At least what I saw. At least from what I'm getting, I'm excited, dude. I'm excited for next year. Let's go to an F1 Cup next year. We'll make it. Let's go to one in like the States. Amidst Leonard's embarrassment, Palazaros continued, Adam definitely knows that you've been parasitized, but I've sealed myself and was asleep. He didn't discover who was parasitizing you. The demigods with such abilities aren't many, but it's also not a very tiny number. Is that so? Leonard instantly heaved a sigh of relief. He was mostly worried about having Adam see Old Man before returning to inform Blasphemon. With this in his mind, Leonard raised a question he had been wondering all this while. Old Man, what's a king of angels? Palazaros didn't... Oh, yeah, Leonard actually doesn't know. Palazaros didn't ask what Leonard had learned of this concept, and he simply explained, those that exceed sequence 1 but have yet to become a deity. If we were... Wait. Those that exceed sequence 1... I thought... Wait, what? I thought Kings of Angels were sequence 1s, but no, they exceed sequence 1, but they're not 0 yet. But have yet to become a deity. If we are specifically talking about the 8 Kings of Angels, apart from those that meet the previous definition, they're the ones who serve the ancient god before the cataclysm. What does it mean to exceed sequence 1 but have yet to become a deity? How is that achieved? By accumulating the so-called uniqueness. Okay, got it. Leonard had the intention of asking, but he suspected that Old Man wouldn't answer in detail. He gradually decided to first talk about other matters before finding an opportunity to raise the issue again. He deliberated for a moment and said with a surprised voice, during the battle for revenge with instant goal, I faced immense adversary to the point of not being able to look at my enemy head on, much less use the luck, siphon charm. When seeking your help failed, I chose to chant Mr. Foe's honorific name and had received the response. After everything ended, I found myself heading for an ancient palace as though I was dreaming. It was above the boundless grey fog. Before Leonard finished the description, Palaz, who had been listening, quietly cut it. The fuck? How does he know this? You met the fool? Okay. Wait, no, we know this. He knows of it. No, wait, no. I'm walking it back. He knows this. He said ancient aura. Yeah, hold up. He's... Aura strikes again? But like... So, there is a fool before Klein. So that's oh, we're gonna have a good conversation, man. I'm ready, dude. Wait, so wait. So there was already a fool before Klein. Got it. Check. And maybe that prior fool was... Oh! That prior fool was the first transmigrator. And some reason he failed. And then Roselle came. He failed. And then Klein was the third cocoon that hatched. Ah, okay. Okay, this could make sense. Yeah, that 3. Okay, that can. I feel like this kind of lining up. Maybe fools are only. Oh, maybe to become a fool, like you had to have been a transmigrator. Maybe that's like the requirement to go from 1 to 0. Like you had to have transmigrated from another world. Yes, his aura is vastly deeper than the sea, loftier than the mountains. High figure was cloaked in the gray fog, preventing anyone from seeing it clearly. Leonard recalled his. Oh wait, no. Maybe for you to become the fool, you need to make another transmigrator go down his journey and set up this crazy scheming plot in order for you to act as the fool. So like for example, like reasonable, like for example, like what if Roselle is alive this entire time and he's been scheming and plotting to become the fool so he can go back home, and then he goes back home, but now Klein becomes a fool, and then in COI now Klein has to set up this whole facade as the fool for another transmigrator so he can go back home. And maybe that's who the real fool is. Maybe the whole point of the fool is to make the next fool think he knows what he's doing, but he's actually been fooled the entire time. And then the previous fool gets to transmigrate back home, and then that fool takes place. And then we're always in this never-ending cycle of fools replacing each other, going back. He probably knows the sequence 0 Seer is the fool. No. I know that. Oh, he knows the result pathway. No, I know result. No, I know result changed. I know, but maybe that's part of the scheme. I don't dare look at the kitchen. I don't dare look at interesting theory. I'll shut the fuck up. Sorry, that was crazy fanfic right there. That was crazy fanfic. Sorry, man. I don't know what the fuck I was smoking, but that was crazy fanfic. Palas fell silent once again and didn't say a word for quite some time. Only after a while did he say, the fool allowed you to tell me this? I know he was a savant and then changed. Dr. Z, watch yourself. I know. Hold up. Okay, I'll chill. I'll chill. But that'd be a crazy fanfic theory. That sounds like a crazy fanfic. Yes, his aura is vastly deeper than the sea, loftier than the mountains. His figure was cloaked in a grey fog, preventing anyone from seeing it clearly. Leonard recalled his encounter and described it in a poetic manner. He established an organization holding a divine council, a true one. Every Monday afternoon, I'm already one of the members. Palatz fell silent once again and didn't say a word for quite some time. Only after a while did he say, "The fool allowed you to tell me this." Yes, sitting there, Leonard nodded and let out a suppressed voice in the air as he said, "Old man, do you know him?" Palazras sighed as he said no, but I can roughly guess of his origins. You don't have to ask what it is because I won't tell you. He's fucking wrong, man. What do you mean? Huh? This might be an opportunity for you, otherwise it will be difficult for you to become a demigod. Leonardo turned to gape before closing his mouth. He stopped mentioning the Terra gathering because Mr. Fool hadn't given him permission to go into details of the other matters, okay? He thought and said, "Old man, is there another king of angels named Medici, known as the War Angel?" Palaz tersely acknowledged. You can also address him as Red Angel, however, he has long perished. You were even close to where he died? We were close? Where? Leonardo was surprised, but he also had no impression of that happening. Palas scoffed. Are the memories of your people from the Evernight Pathway so terrible? I recall that your goddess wasn't like that. What the fuck? Do you still remember the ruin from beneath Backland? The Tudor turns to United Empire, the palace where Lisa Tudor became the Blood Emperor. Leonard asked in enlightenment. Palazra's slightly aged voice resounded once again. That's right. As Leonard tried to figure out the logic embedded in this matter, he informed the old man of the evil spirit. The revenant soul of Medici fused with two angels of the Sauron and Einhorn family. I just mean it's a high place and you get excited if I say it with love. No, all good. Okay, I got you. Becoming a brand new evil spirit, Palaz. So he became a new spirit. The revenant soul of Medici fused with the two angels of the Sauron and Einhorn family, and then he became a brand new evil spirit. That makes sense. If we can split a soul like a Zik, then I guess we can fuse them. Yeah, that makes sense. Palaz repeated, yeah, just like at the end of Volume 4, like if you can fuse together and become something else, okay. Palaz repeated Leonard's words in disbelief, following that. He couldn't hide his amusement and said, the three of them are absolute arch-enemies, the kind that can't stand each other's existence. To think that they are together in death, fused as one. It must be quite lively. Leonardo didn't know what old man was laughing about as he subconsciously asked, they are arch-enemies? Palaz held back his laughter and said, yes, the reason why Medici failed and was captured was because he was dealing with a Sauron ancestor who had fell in his trap. It wasn't that he wasn't prepared, but that he was mainly focused on our primordial demoness side. Surprisingly, Elisa Tudor suddenly went mad. It wasn't sudden. He had a change. He, on the other hand, Amon and Adam had played a rather important role. The evil spirit is an enemy of Adam. Why would the Blood Emperor want to capture Medici and the two angels of Sauron and Einhorn? The place they perished was in the palace where Elisa Tudor was trying to become Blood Emperor. Wait. They perished was in the place where Elisa Tudor was trying to become the Blood Emperor. They were the ritual materials needed to become a true god. According to Merciful, Adam is one step closer to divinity after obtaining 008. Is this also considered a gathering of materials? Oman is dealing with old man because of similar reasons. Leonard had some theories and had the urge to ask, but he ultimately held back. Bro, he needs to let us know. Now I'm getting lost. He just says don't spoil easy because I didn't expect him to pick up on all the clues that come across. Oh, okay. He was afraid that he touched on highly secretive matters, causing Old Man to react negatively. He planned on finding an opportunity at the Terror Club to ask about such matters. After a brief silence, Leonardo looked at the closed door and he said with a surprised voice, has Mr. Fool and the church reached a certain degree of a tactic cooperation? That's the application if no one is investigating you. Palazzo's answered in a rather direct manner. Leonardo nodded indiscriminately. You have to go? No, man. Yo, have fun, dude. I'll see you later today then, bro. Later tomorrow, Wiz. Yeah, dude, thanks for stopping by. Take care, dude. What will they arrange me to do next? Arrangement. Reward you for the services rendered and allow you to advance to Sequence 5. After you finish digesting the potion, then you will be allocated a regular team, and you will be sent to complete a mission. Otherwise, they might send you to the large dioceses like Backland to be a deacon in the Church of Certain Matters, Palat said without much concern. Back to Backland, tongue twister. Klein seemed to be planning something in Backland. Leonard's thoughts were suddenly liberated. He didn't converse with Old Man again as he slumped again the wall and cradled his head with his hands, sitting rather leisurely. Late at night in the border town of East and West Balham, outside a row of warehouses, dressed in a formal suit, Dwayne Dantes with his white sideburns was holding a gold inlet cane. After exchanging signals and countersigns with the officer on duty, he watched as the officer opened the door to the warehouse, and he heard him say in a relaxed manner, it's everything inside, check the goods and move it yourself. Also pay me the remaining amount before leaving. Dwayne Dantes nodded slightly and weighed the suitcases in his hand. In it was 5,000 pounds in cash, entirely from the May Sanchez down payment. At this moment, the two figures were silently watching this develop 2 warehouses away in the 3-story building. All right, next chapter. Okay. All right. Next chapter. 965. I'm now starting. Now I'm noticing the story has taken a really drastic step up when it comes to world building. It's like, oh, man, it's like there's so much world building and setup from the first four volumes, and now it's like everything is slowly like being pieced together. So now it's kind of getting hard for me to track everything, especially because I'm not taking notes anymore, just because of time restraints. So I apologize for that. But now it's starting to get hard for me to kind of like recall and piece things together. Whew! But yes, first transmigrator is probably ancient sun god according to Klein. I forgot he even said that. You see? I forgot he even said that. Holy shit. Thank you for reminding me, Clown Man. Chapter 965 is called Brief Crisis. I'm having a brief crisis over here trying to recall all this. On the top floor of a small building... I need to sip my coffee. I need to chill. No, I haven't checked it out yet, but I do. All right. Downloading Liza P in the background now. Perfect. All right. Next chapter, 965. Briefcase. On the top floor of the small building, I'm sorry, I need to reread this part. I think I read it a little bit, but let's just reread it. On the top floor of a small building, a black-haired, brown-eyed man, donning dark-colored clothes, was looking down at the arms deal not far away. This man, who looked about 28, couldn't help but say, he actually got May Sanchez. Oh, holy Lord of Storms. Alfred, I had known it would turn out this way. We might have already done the mission ourselves. Even if all the expenses are deducted, we should still earn at least 20,000 pounds. That man beside him was a young man in a black trench coat. He looked about 24 and had a resplendent blonde hair and blue eyes that resembled a lake. He had pretty good looks. Okay. Being addressed as Alfred, he shook his head and said, no, that would not be too noticeable. May Sanchez allegedly has always been unclear. Before figuring out his take on the matter, rashly discussing an arms deal with him is extremely dangerous. Dwayne Dantes is able to earn 20,000 pounds because he dares to take the risk. The black-haired and brown-eyed man immediately scoffed. To think that Alfred Hall, who had led a few dozen men to assault a battalion with over 1,000 troops, would claim that he doesn't dare take risks? Alfred shook a glance at him and said, Pagani? This is the same thing that happened because I was confident wiping out their command center, and once there was a lack of leadership, 1,000 scattered troops might not be as formidable as 1,000 pigs. In addition, the transaction this time is solely a test. It is to establish communication and set up a channel. If it's done by us who are to seek out the next time and the subsequent ones, if we keep at it, we will ultimately expose ourselves. Only that happens, it will be a diplomatic matter. Furthermore, with the detail depending on the broadening, who knows if it would incur the notice of demigods of the other factions. That would spell danger. Pagani, that's a hard word to say, Pagani. Pagani said with a smile, how can demigods be that free to pay notice to such small scales arm deals? Even every faction had a limited number of demigods. There are too many matters awaiting them. I know, I'm only raising an example. Alfred replied in said manner. Pagani didn't harp on the matter and turned his gaze back to Dwayne Dantes, who stood outside the warehouse. This gentleman is said to be very generous. He donated the stocks worth more than 10,000 pounds to the church of Evernight shortly after he arrived in Backland. Is this the early stage investments that you often speak of? Also, he seems to be working at the same charity foundation with your sister, Tisk. Such men are very welcome with the young ladies. He's good looking. He has an outstanding demeanor. He's smart, experienced, and has the artifice. He has seen all kinds of women, and he's at the age to settle down. Alfred, you have to warn Audrey that the playboy will always be one that's one's moral character is a flaw that can never be corrected. You can't let the most dazzling jewel of Backland be taken by this fellow. Alfred turned his head to glare at Pagani. There's no need for you to show any concern about such matters. Audrey isn't a young and clueless lady. Her knowledge of the world... I feel like that's intentional. Her knowledge of the world is far more mature than you imagine. I feel like that's a little on the nose. I'm sorry. I think that is going to be a ship now, in the future. Like Klein, German, World, X Audrey. I can see that now being a thing. After all these one-on-one conversations and like all the one-on-one moments she has with him. Her knowledge of the world is far more mature. The world needs justice. And you guys have been saying that for a long time. And for a long time, it's like, what does that mean? The world needs just like the world? But no, you guys are talking, you guys are saying Klein X Audrey. I think that's what you guys have been implying this whole time. of the world is far more mature than you imagine. Besides, my father and mother are in Backland. They have the ability to prevent any nasty things from happening. Upon saying that, Alfred looked at the nearby arms warehouse and paused. May Sanchez actually sent Haggis. I'll go greet him. This isn't the best time to meet, right? Just as Pagani was about to say a word, Alfred had already turned to walk down the stairs. Klein, in the form of Dwayne Dantes, didn't bring any servants. He held his gold inland cane and stood with May Sanchez, representative Haggis, outside the warehouse. They watched as crates of munitions were carried out and loaded onto the carriages. At this moment, he half turned his body upon sensing something and looked elsewhere. The person that was reflected in his eyes was a young man wearing trench coat without a hat. His blonde hair was combed into a slick back, and his blue eyes looked like a lake under a bright, clear sky. He was tall with a good build. His every move exuded an indescribable sense of dignity. Even without any troops surrounding him, the authority he wielded was obvious. Alfred, Haggis noticed the man as well as he cried out in delighted surprise. Alfred, Miss Justice's second older brother. This feeling resembles that of the arbiter pathway. Klein raised his right hand and took off his top hat to press it against his chest as a form of greeting. After Alfred Hall greeted Haggis, he turned to look at Dwayne Dantes. Your character is widely spread across Backland. Even I've heard of you, despite being an East Ballum character, a character in making arms deals. Klein lampooned as he chuckled. I'm only doing things that I believe need to be done. Alfred nodded. I believe there's no need for any self-introductions. Haggis should have mentioned me to you. Yes, Colonel Hall. I keep forgetting he's a colonel. Yes, Colonel Hall. Klein replied with a smile. I only learned that Miss Audrey has another brother here in the southern continent after I arrived. That he served the military and has rendered impressive services. Alfred cast his gaze on Dwayne Dantes' face and changed the topic. I thought you would take the opportunity to work at the Loan Charity Bursey Foundation, but you surprised me by choosing to come to the southern continent. Klein maintained his smile from before. For an outsider to truly enter a pre-existing circle is quite impossible just by giving donations, doing by charity, and hosting balls and banquets, also tearfully answering very wise. After exchanging a few pleasantries, he asked Haggis, did something happen in Kokawa? It seemed rather serious. Haggis squeezed a smile. I'm not too sure. I was hiding in an underground bunker to General's resistance. I later heard that there was lightning storms at the Revival Square. Give or take. Yeah, maybe a few lightning strikes at Revival Square. Lightning storm. Alfred gaze turned towards Dwayne Dantes again. Klein nodded and said, indeed, the hotel I was staying at isn't too far from the Revival Square. I did see continuous bolts of lightning strike the area. All that happened in the day. Alfred's gaze turned towards Haggis again. What happened to the scene in the end? Most of the area was in shambles. There were marks of lightning strikes. Haggis didn't hide the truth at all. Alfred nodded gently and pointed to the side before saying to Haggis and Dwayne Dantes, I still have other matters to tend to. We can chat again when the opportunity arises. See you again. Klein politely replied. It made them appear to be a social gathering instead of being outside a munitions warehouse. He was watching Alfred Hall leave when his body trembled. His head made an abrupt turn to the side, and the primitive forest that covered East and West Ballum, a figure was slowly outlined with his back bent. He had a fleshy face with slightly brown skin. His clothes were baggy, and he had a rapier by his waist, and his hand was a silver mask. A silver mask. Did you guys know it's Cat Day today? Oh, really? I didn't know that. Looking aside, well, we should celebrate Cat Klein then. Looking aside, the figure straightened his body. He was none other than Admiral Ludwell, who had previously entered the underworld. However, at this moment, two clumps of blood red flames were burning in his eye sockets. He looked completely different from before. I'm starving. Ludwell opened his mouth. The fuck? I'm starving, Ludwell. Ludwell opened his mouth, letting a sigh that seemed to come from his chest. He then cast his gaze in a different direction, muttering, the owner of this marionette is over there. Fate has brought us together again. He has a hunter pathway item on him. It's perfect for replenishing myself. Just as he said that, a bloody mouth appeared on the left cheek of Ludwell's face. A bloody mouth appeared on the left of Ludwell's face. It opened and closed as it said, Medici, what we need to deal with first is our survival. After this marionette loses its connection to its owner, it's no different from the dead. The remnant spirits will quickly return to the underworld and not be able to maintain the body. And without the underworld inside him, we will inevitably be weakened until we dissipate. Wait, what's going on? Yes, the most pressing matter now is to find another gatekeeper. Another mouth appeared on Ludwell's right cheek. Red Angel Medici immediately scoffed. Wait, so who was the one on the left cheek? Well, Medici fused. Sauron, Einhorn were the two women. Wait. Sauron, Einhorn, were those two of you in the past? Your nature as angels have. Oh, Sauron. Sauron, Einhorn were the two of you women in the past. Your nature as angels have been left in the dumps because of you? That fellow was able to resist 008's arrangement several times, implying that he's definitely not awake. With a chance... Wait, so why did they pick Lidwell? I'm sorry. Did they pick Lidwell because Lidwell was in the underworld? And since they were sent... Since at the end of Volume 4, Medici was sent back to the underworld, they're using him as a vessel. Or didn't they say marionette? Man, this series... Wow. I've never read anything this like in depth before, man. It's so hard for me to get used to this, even after like 900 plus chapters. This is crazy. I'm so used to just reading manga. That man, or like manhwa, dude. Besides, the 100 pathway item on him can effectively extend our existence. It extends our existence. Once we finish him, it wouldn't be too late finding a gatekeeper. The bloody crack on Lidwell's left cheek immediately scoffed. Medici, have you sacrificed your brain to the true creator? That fellow has clearly advanced. In our current condition, defeating a bizarre sorcerer isn't difficult, but killing him is nearly impossible. Medici wasn't frustrated, and instead he laughed deeply. This isn't something unresolvable. As long as you allow me to chant my lord's honorific name, helpers will immediately arrive. A gatekeeper might even be automatically brought here. The mouth on Ludwell's right cheek immediately opened as he closed. Sauron, let's work together to stop and then search for a gatekeeper. All right. What the fuck, man? That's so weird. So now they're all in Ludwell's body. All right, the mouth on Lidwell's left cheek didn't hesitate to reply. Upon seeing this, Red Angel Medici laughed. I'm sorry, is there any artwork on this? The two of you have fallen for it. My goal has been met. I can confirm the two of you were previously women. The mouths on Lidwell's cheeks roared. Shut up, huh? We've been merged together for 2,000 years. Wouldn't we not know what tricks you're up to? There's no need to struggle again. As they spoke, the colors around Admiral Hill's Ludwell instantly saturated and stacked upon one another. He had entered the spirit world and began traversing it. So now the three of them are possessing Admiral Ludwell? Outside the munitions warehouse, Klein finally retracted his gaze as his premonition for danger vanished. From that one moment, he had a baffling... And then we just cut away. That's all we got on that? We don't get more? Okay. Outside the munitions warehouse, Klein finally retracted his gaze as his premonition for danger vanished. From that one moment, he had a baffling feeling that he was unable to project the corresponding scene in his mind. What happened? Klein muttered to himself. Without waiting any further, he threw the suitcase in his hand to the officer who was in charge of handling and taking over. He then said to Haggis, "The rest is yours. You can give me the rest of the payment." He was referring to the heavy case filled with gold bars and coins. Haggis had planned on having drinks with Dwayne Dantes after the completion of the deal to celebrate its success, and to discuss any future details. He never expected Dwayne Dantes to be in such a hurry to leave. All right, it's on the carriage, he pointed and said. Alfred, who had already walked quite a distance, turned his head to look over. Perplexed, he wasn't sure that Dwayne Dantes wasn't following the pre-designated procedures. I almost ran out of breath. Okay, next chapter. I really wish we went back before we change point of view scenes, because I need to know more on what's happening over there, man. Chapter 966 is called Training. Seeing Alfred look over, Klein returned with a smile and nodded gently. I suddenly sensed some danger. With that said, he calmly turned around and headed for the carriage, which Haggis had pointed out. Danger, Alfred repeated the word softly as he wordily surveyed his surroundings, but failed to find anything odd. He slowed down his pace, constantly taking note of his surroundings before returning to a nearby 3-story building without of the ordinary vigilance. Pagani glanced at the heavy expression wearing Alfred and asked, feeling... my music is way... Yeah, it's a good pace. My music is a little bit loud. I'm gonna lower it a bit more. Feeling. Alfred repeated the word softly as he wordily surveyed his surroundings, but failed to find anything odd. He slowed down his pace, constantly taking notes of his surroundings before returning to the nearby 3-story building with out of the ordinary vigilance. Pagani glanced at the heavily expression wearing Alfred and asked, feeling somewhat puzzled, what happened. He was quite a distance from the arms deal. He hadn't heard of their conversation. Alfred walked to the window and looked down at the convoy that he had prepared to leave after loading the munition. He deliberated and said, Dwayne Dantes suddenly left, saying that he had sensed danger. Pagani didn't dismiss it as he wordily looked around. He didn't notice anything amiss, even when May Sanchez's men left the regions and vanished into the darkness. He then laughed. Alfred, I think you're too sensitive. I believe it's solely because Dwayne Dantes is a coward and was unwilling to stay here for too long. I don't know about that, man. Alfred retracted his gaze and frowned. Perhaps. After returning to the hotel, Klein made Enzo, who had turned into a mixed blood lad, opened the suitcase in his hand. He took out the gold coins and bars one by one and did the count. It was valued in a total of 30,000 Loan gold coins. Thankfully, my previous agreement with Miss Messenger's 10,000 Loan gold coins. I don't need to make any additional conversation. Sitting leisurely in the reclining chair, Klein drank the sweet and sour but refreshing Goddard as he monitored his marionette's work. After Enzo separated the atoms, he took out the adventurer's harmonica and blew into it. Renette Tanker walked out of the void with the 4 blonde red hairs in her hand. It was as though she was constantly nearby. Her 8 eyes turned towards the pile of gold coins and gold bars that he had separated. After a few seconds, the 4 red heads in Renette Tanker's hand said, "Very good. In the future, missions will be..." What? She's raising the fucking price? In the future, missions will cost more. What's the logic behind this? Why are you raising the price after the mission despite me paying you so quickly? Klein was taken aback as he asked with a straightened back, "What?" Renee Tanker's 4 blonde red eyes headed oddly seriously. "Mission price depends on your ability to earn money." Damn. I never expected that. Klein turned the gate, but he was unable to retort. After all, such matters were solely decided by the helper. Furthermore, with him advancing to sequence 4 and becoming a demigod, the missions that he needed her help with in the future was likely to increase in difficulty and danger. True. It was seemingly reasonable to increase the price. After Renette Tanker swallowed the gold coin and vanished from the room, Klein reined in his thoughts and began doing calculations regarding his current wealth. "My expenses have been quite significant recently. I'm left with 17,000. It's probably the most he's ever had. I'm left with 17,275 pounds in cash and 65 gold coins. This pile of gold bars worth 25,000 pounds. That makes a total of more than 40,000. Yeah, this is the richest he's ever been. This makes a total of 40,000 pounds. Is not something to dismiss in all of the Lone Kingdom. I can already buy a manor and some land for farming. Arms dealing sure is profitable. Renette Tanker needed gold coins, so whatever was left were gold bars. Standing up and sending the gold bars above the grey fog, Klein walked to the window and cast his gaze to the north. While the matter coming to a close, he was poised to return to Backland. Looking at the horizon, Klein suddenly sighed silently. Backland. Northborough, Backland University of Technology. Backland University of Technology. Audrey was touring the campus. Oh, yeah, because they set up their whole foundation there. Audrey was touring the campus with a few staff members of the Low-End Charity Bursey Foundation. She was dressed in a simple light green dress, but her waist was a white, unadorned leather belt. Is that the mystical item that can change into anything? Her blonde hair had a veiled hat with ribbon flowers that showed off her playful side. She didn't wear any other accessories other than the silver bangle on her left wrist. Oh, that's the item. She looked no different from a female student that came from a family that could only be considered middle class. Over the past few days, she had been to the public primary schools that bordered Eastborough, and she had visited the technical schools in the area around Backland Bridge. She had already knew the appropriate clothes needed for the occasion, not treating charity work as another social scene. Her green limped eyes started around slightly as she wore a faint smile as she observed the students that came and went. Backland University of Technology had recently sent out its acceptance letter. It was matriculation day for the new class of students. Matriculation shouldn't happen in late August or early September, but as a newly restricted university, Backland University of Technology's entrance examinations were later than the other universities. They had also delayed the results, which also meant the students that pledged for the school had also participated in the examinations of other universities. What's with the face? What happened? What did we miss? Or it might have already been accepted. Did I mispronounce something? Therefore, they had brought forward the registration work to confirm that matriculated numbers before deciding how many more students needed to be accepted. Due to this, Audrey and the Lone Charity Bursey Foundation staff came to help with the first batch of approved applicants to complete their matriculation procedure. Wherever she could see, she discovered that the students on campus wore a beaming expression, and every action they made exuded obvious confidences. Their words and actions had an indescribable vigor, one to seem to have immense hope for the future that allowed them to see light. And this feeling was completely different from the few public primary schools that Audrey had experienced in the past. The students there were either boorish and noisy or silent and gloomy. A common trait of theirs was being uneasy and confused. Whether they encountered strangers or status, they would be filled with trepidation. Trepidation? I said it right. Their eyes were dull, lacking the spirit of their youths ought to have. I really wish these kids will have a chance of receiving higher education and be like students here where they can work hard for a better future. As Audrey sighed silently, she swept her gaze to a male figure duo who were likely siblings. The elder brother had clearly stepped into society and started working. He wore a silk hat and wore a rather thin black formal suit. He appeared to be in his 30s and he had air resembling a civil servant. Is it Benson? He had borrowed a rather old camera from it's not Benson. He had borrowed a rather old camera from somewhere and had placed it on the tripod. He gestured for his younger sister to move and adjust her posture after searching for the best angle. The sister was about 17 or 18. Shut the fuck up. It is. Oh, wait, no. Is it Benson and Melissa? The sister was about 17 or 18, and her black hair simply cascaded down. Her brown eyes had a look of exasperation, but she didn't say a word as she seriously listened to her brother's instructions. Some combinations, it is them! Some combinations were everywhere on campus. Some of them had parents and their children, while others were groups of... What a beautiful scene. What a beautiful scene. Audrey looked away and continued proceeding forward. Aw, it was Benson and Melissa. Wait. Oh, man, they made it. Oh, man. The older brother had clearly stepped into society and started working. Oh, man. I got a tear in my eye. Wow. That's so sad. Ah, man. What a beautiful... Fucking Audrey. Why you gotta make me cry? What a beautiful scene. This is the school Melissa liked. This is the school... You know what? They did talk about... She wanted to go to, like, a technical school, right? Fuck, man. What was it called? Backland of what? University of Technology. Yeah. Yeah, she was always good. She was always good, like, with machinery. Yeah, I remember she did, like, a mechanical animal in Volume 1 or whatever. What a beautiful scene. Audrey looked away and continued proceeding forward. I'm about to cry, dude. No. I don't want them in this volume. I'm scared. I'm scared to keep reading, man. I don't want them to be in the I don't want them to be in the series anymore. They need to go. They need to get as fucking far away from this series as possible. We're approaching the final act, and if one of them fucking dies, I'm dropping this series, man. Nothing better happened to them. I hate how we're... Oh, it's beautiful, but I hate how we're getting all these beautiful scenes with them, like, sprinkled. Or even sad scenes, like, sprinkled since Volume 1. And I don't like that, man. I don't like this subtle little build-up to whatever could happen. If they reunite at the end, I'm cool with that. It was a square in the middle of it. Wait, no, they probably will reunite at the end. Klein probably realized he's never going to be able to go back to his real family in Backland. But because he still treats Benson and Melissa as his family, he's like, you know what? This is my... Oh, his new goal is to protect or be with Benson and Melissa. Okay, wait. Hold up, so he can still have a goal in life, okay? Its massive body was standing there, proudly adding industrial vibes to Backland University of Technology. Whoosh. The behemoth-like steam locomotive spewed out smoke as it held its long body into the platform before slowing down. A mixed-blood 7 or 8-year-old girl who looked like a doll held her mother's hand as she waited in the long line. She asked her father, who was similarly mixed blood with Loan and Balam heritage, about Desi Bay. Amidst her shuffling, she saw a gentleman with the white sideburns and a top hat holding a gold cane. He had a servant with brown skin as he walked towards first class. The servant looked around curiously and said, "Sir, the recent situation is different from what I had imagined. I thought that the people of Balam would lead through the difficult lives with squalid, chaotic, poor, and repressed surroundings. But there was none of them. We even drank Gauder and smoked East Balam cigarettes. There were even some people who could afford bikes. As you know, although I have Balam blood in me, I was born in Backland. I've never been to the southern continent. Of course, my Dutanese is still too hard. Is not too bad." The very noble middle-aged gentleman chuckled and waved his cane. "That's because we only went to the cities and regions that aren't too bad. The saddest people of Balam are in the villages, in the plantations. The rest take up residence around the factories, creating slums. We never had a chance to see them." As though sensing the girl's notice, the gentleman with his deep blue eyes and his servant looked over him and gazed a warm smile. The corners of their lips clearly curled up, revealing 8 teeth before they nodded gently, looking away and continued their way. Before long, the girl and her parents boarded the steam locomotive and found their seats. Who are these people? Well, I know Dwayne is one of them, but who are the others that he's talking to? When the whistle sounded again, the girl saw a man with dark brown skin, soft facial features, and red slumps on his cheek walk over, his head bowed. His hand pressed on his... Does that mean red lumps? Is that freckles? And red lumps on his cheek walk over with his head bowed. He had pressed on his hat as he quickly walked down the aisle and headed for the head of the train. The man knocked on a partition before quickly entering the operator's compartment and said to the train driver, "All the train attendants have been swapped with our men. The bridge ahead is where the sacrifice will be held." With a thick mustache, the train driver nodded and said, "May God be satisfied with the sacrificial items on this train. Let's hope we can gain eternal life in this kingdom." Whoosh. The steam locomotive drove under the bridge before cruising past a huge bridge. After a long trip, it finally arrived at its destination, the pier. The doll-like mixed-blood girl was somewhat sleepy, and it was no longer as lively as before. Under her parents' lead, she followed the crowd and inched towards the door. There were a few attendants at the door who were helping some of the passengers remove their luggage. When the girl and her parents walked past, these attendants curled the corners of their lips and revealed 8 teeth, showcasing a warm smile. What's with the 8 teeth? After the girl jumped out of the platform, she looked back and then subconsciously she saw the figure standing outside the door discussing something. Among them was a train conductor as well as the man with the lumps on his cheek. A second later, the people turned their heads around and curled over the corners of their lips, revealing 8... What's with the 8 teeth? Everybody has 8 fucking teeth. Revealing 8 teeth. The girl raised her gaze and skipped along as she left the plantation with her parents. I'm so confused. Is that just like when they smile, you see 8 teeth? But everybody has 8 teeth? I don't know if there's more behind that. That kind of confused me. Okay. Well, I'm not confused. I get it. But, like, I don't know if that was, like, being set up or built up for something that's going to happen. But next chapter. I digress. Let's keep reading. No, I'm telling you. It's not negative comprehension comment. I've been watching horror movies recently. Yes, like, see, like, why is everybody smiling? If you have watched Smile, you realize when somebody randomly just smiling at you looking like that, red flags. So I'm like, what are the red flags? But we'll keep reading. They're performing a sacrificial ritual. Is that what it is? Wait, what was the hint? Wait, let's keep reading. Let's see, we'll find out. If there was a ritual going on, I completely missed it. But let's keep reading. Chapter 967 is called Revelation. Cold winds blew across the platform at night, causing the hanging gas lamps to sway. The light of the dusk, you know how every person has their own way of smiling? What happens if everyone smiles the exact same way? No, I know. That's why I'm like, why is everybody having the same smile? Yeah, no, that's what's throwing me off. By the way, this is the chapter Cuttlefish had to rewrite around because of censorship. The one I'm about to read? 677? 967? Really? This chapter was rewritten? Or the last chapter? Yeah? Oh, I'm excited. We have a controversial chapter. The whole train part? Wait, what? Why was it rewritten? What was the original writing? No. Reread a few previous paragraphs. Let me scroll back a bit. I'm gonna go back to where it said whoosh, where it said the point of view change. Let me see. Whoosh. The behemoth-like steam locomotive spewed out smoke as it held its long body into the platform before slowing down to stop. A mixed blood 7 or 8-year-old girl. Originally more terrorism and gore, sacrifices, horror, etc. Okay, well let me read it. Let me see if I can catch it. A mixed blonde 7 or 8-year-old girl who looked like a doll held her mother's hand as she waited on a long line. She asked her father, who similarly mixed blood with Loan and Ballum heritage, about Desi Bay. Amidst her shuffling, she saw a gentleman with white sideburns and a top hat holding a gold inland cane. He had a servant with brown skin as he walked towards first class. See, at first I thought that was Dwayne Dantes. It's not, if we're doing a ritual. The servant looked around curiously and said, "Sir, the recent situation is different from where I had imagined. I thought the people from Ballum would lead tough and difficult lives with squalid, chaotic, poor, and repressed surroundings." Check DMs. I sent a now deleted comment code for Jermaine. Okay, I will read it. There were even some people who could afford bikes. As you know, I had Ballum blood in me. I was born in Backland. I have never been in Southern Continent. Of course, my due to knees is still not too bad. The very noble middle-aged gentleman chuckled and waved his cane. That's because we only went to the cities and regions that aren't too bad. The saddest people in Ballum in the village. I read this part. We have a chance to see them, as though sensing the girl's notice. The gentleman with the deep blue eyes and his servant looked over and gave a warm smile. The corners of the lips clearly curled up, revealing 8 teeth before nodded gently. Looking away and continued their way, before long the girl and her parents boarded the steam locomotive and found their seats. When the whistle sounded again, the girl saw a man with dark brown skin, soft facial features, and red slumps on the cheek walk over with his head bowed. His hand pressed on his hat as he quickly walked down the aisle and headed for the head of the train. He's going to the front. It is Dwayne. He is acting with his marionette. The man knocked on a partition before quickly entering the operator's compartment and said with a smile, to the train driver, "All the train attendants have been swapped with our men." Okay, so all the train attendants are gone and now just them. The bridge ahead is where the sacrifice will be held. With a thick mustache, the train driver nodded and said, "May God be satisfied with the sacrificial items on this train." Oh, when they meant items, they meant everybody. Oh, they meant the passengers. Oh, I thought sacrificial items were like just items. Oh, they mean the fucking people. Let's hope we can gain eternal life in kingdom. Oh, okay. The steam locomotive drove under a bridge where they're cruising past a huge bridge. After a long trip, it finally arrived in destination, the pier. The doll-like mixed-blood girl was somewhat sleeping and was no longer as lively as before. Under her parents' lead, she followed the crowd inch by inch towards the door. So all of them are going out the door. There were a few attendants at the door who were helping some of the passengers remove their luggage. When the girl and her parents walked past, these attendants curled the corners of the lips and revealed 8 teeth, showcasing a warm smile. After the girl jumped out of the platform, she looked back at them subconsciously. The figure standing outside from the door discussed something. Among them was a train conductor, as well as a man with lumps on his cheek. After a second later, these pass turned their heads over and curled the corners of the lips, revealing 8 smiles. The girl retracted her gaze and skipped along as she left the platform with her parents. Got it. Got it. I got it. So these are his comments. I'm sorry. It took me a while to read. When they said sacrificial items, I thought talking about like items on the train, not necessarily the people. Afterwards, check DMs. Oh, we got it. What did Clown say earlier? Easy is such a nice person, naive person. He thinks sacrificial items are items he wants to help evil spirits. Exactly, dude. All right. So this is Cuttlefish complaining about censorship. I'm sorry, this chapter is quite short because I was so angry that I couldn't write anymore. When I was writing half of this chapter, I wanted to refer to another sentence in the previous chapter, so I opened the previous chapter just to find out that the paragraph related to sacrifice was deleted. This type of review and correct is unacceptable and no words can describe it. Without that paragraph, the whole situation becomes incoherent and no one can understand that the author wants to write, even me. Moreover, what content in this paragraph violated the rule? Oh, so in the last chapter, there's a big cutoff on the right side? Oh, shit. So for, I guess, the publishers, they went back and they deleted a comment. They deleted a paragraph from his last chapter, so when he originally wrote this, it made no sense, okay? Moreover, what content of this paragraph violated the rule? A story about villains that evil things. The good guy punished the villains. Is this horrible enough to be deleted? Yeah, this is what I don't get. We live in a day and age where if a bad guy is too evil, it's like, oh, you can't do that. It's like, but he's a bad guy. That's the point. It's a bad person doing bad things. Like that's the point. It's not a good guy doing bad things. It's a bad guy doing bad things. I understand the sentiment. I hate how when people watch things nowadays, there's this one side of the audience like, well, we can't do that. That's too mean. That's too evil. It's like, that's the point. They're doing evil things, dude. It's like, that's the point. A story about villains did evil things. The good guy punished the evil is horrible enough to be deleted. I didn't describe details of the sacrifice so others can copy it. I just mentioned it slightly. I don't understand the whole process of that aims at the review incorrect anymore. Do you want to change a book into it a meaningless? Ooh. I can't accept that my work is turned into an incoherent, illogical, broken that describes nothing, inexplicable, and impossible for anyone to read. Previously, many chapters went through that review incorrect process, and I already made tons of changes. I also understand that the policy is very tight, and everyone should understand the situation of others, so I didn't make any complaints. However, I can't endure this ridiculous review incorrect, which breaks the whole connection of the plot. Make it become incoherent. Everyone knows about the style of the theme of Lord of the Mysteries. Everyone knows what situation was described in the book in the future. If the crazy review incorrect continues, I am unable to finish the story. Oh my goodness, that's scary. I added the deleted paragraph of the previous chapter. Everyone can reread it again, but I don't know when it will be deleted again. If the situation continues, I don't know for how long I could continue to write and how can I finish this book. 1 hour later, I calmed myself down a little. I will not say anything which can be considered radical. All my readers, please continue to read and please cherish what you are reading. I will continue to write until I am unable to write anymore, and I will not punish my reader because of the other's mistakes. Yeah, just like this. Damn, that's crazy. Okay. So he had to rewrite the whole sacrificial part because of that. Damn, that's crazy. Okay. Well, let me put this away. I never would have thought that. Yeah, thank you for sending me that username. I actually didn't know that. Okay. I thought it was only 627 that was rewritten. I didn't know that was I didn't know the sacrifice was also rewritten. Okay. Yeah, I had to write around it all. That's kind of sad though. Like I can see how as a writer you'd be pissed off. You write something in a previous chapter that builds up this chapter, and then that whole part gets deleted, so this kind of just feels like out of place, out of nowhere. And especially if he's writing like days apart, right? It's like, damn, that sucks. Well, I like how at the end is like, all right, I've calmed myself down. I will keep writing until I can't write anymore. I hope you guys enjoy it. All right, next chapter. 967 is called Revelation. All right, chapter 967 is called Revelation. Cold winds blew across the platform at night, causing the hanging gas lamps to sway. The light thus stretched shortened from time to time in the scene, allowing the steam locomotive that was slightly parked on the tracks to oscillate between being cloaked in shadows or escaping in darkness. It had an indescribable sense of gloom and death. Hey man, just popped in to ask, will there be a Shadow Slave reading this week? Yes. I got you, Nightshade. There will. Don't worry. For some reason, after the passengers disembarked, all the train staff, including the train driver, returned to the carriage and never came out again. Wait. I skipped a sentence. The light of the dust stretched and shortened between 4 times in the scene, allowing the steam locomotive that was silently parked on the tracks to oscillate between being cloaked in shadows or escaping in darkness, and an indescribable sense of gloom and death. At this moment, a squad, black and white checkered policemen entered the platform. Under the leader of the railway company's duty managers, they walked to the huge train that appeared old. For some reason, after the passengers disembarked, all the train staff, including the train driver, returned to the carriage and never came out again. I sent people to look for them and get them out to have some rest, but they quickly ran out, looking like they had been inflicted with a disease. All they could do was hysterically shout, "They're all dead, they're all dead." The railway duty manager in a blue coat had a lamp, walked as he briefed the police about the situation. From his stammering and trembling body, the police could easily tell that the extreme horror in him, it was as though a sudden tap on his shoulder would literally cause him to jump and abandon everything to rush for the exit. His emotions infected the police. All of them held their hands to their waists as they pressed onto their holsters. What the fuck? Are they drawing their guns? Wait, they're pressing their holsters? Tap, tap, tap. The leather shoes hitting the solid hard ground left reverberating echoes. The police followed the duty manager and warily entered from the front carriage. Inside the carriage, there were 2 people sitting into each row. They were distracted to the left and right, and they stood away from the windows. At this moment, they were leaning against the backs of their seats motionless. Through the illumination of the gas lamps outside the lanterns in their hands, the inspector leading them very quickly recognized the scene before him. Here were the staff of the steam locomotive. They were wearing blue uniforms that different men and women, and they were sitting in different seats in silence. Their faces were pale and their eyes were wide open. Although there were any sounds of breathing, the corners of the lips were curved up, revealing 8 teeth. Okay, so it's the same people. Everyone present felt that their hair stand upon seeing the uniform smile as they subconsciously held their breaths. This was an extremely bizarre and terrifying scene. All they wished was to turn around and leave, beginning the investigations only when it was bright. The leader, they're like, hell no, this is too fucking scary. Like, just come back in the morning. The leading inspector drew 2 deep gasps before he instructed the constables beside him, go confirm if they are dead. Upon saying that, he glanced at the duty manager, following that. Sorry, I have to pick my nose. Following him and seeing if anyone else is missing or excess people included. All right, officer, the duty manager said with a trembling voice. As he said to the constables, ventured deeper into the carriage. The other policemen drew their revolvers and remained on high alert. In an unbearable silence, time slowly tickered by until finally one of the constables stopped at the end of the carriage, turned around and shouted, "It's confirmed, all of them are dead." The railway manager stuttered immediately after he said, "There are 2 missing. The train driver and the train conductor." The inspector calmed down significantly when he realized that nothing had happened all at the same time. He thought and said to all the constables, maintain the corpse's present state and await the autopsy. Meanwhile, split into 2 teams. One team is to head to the other carriages to search for the train conductor and drive, while the other team is to check on the scene for clues and relevant information. Once the sun rises, we will begin investigation, starting with the train personnel and the passengers who were previously on board. We will search for any commonalities and peculiarities. Although many passengers didn't present their identification documents when purchasing the tickets, the inspector believed that it was possible to find people who had registered themselves and learn from them of any abnormalities on the train or the passengers worth paying attention to. Just as he said that, a biting cold wind started blowing through the carriage. When all this came to an end, the inspector was about to emphasize his orders when he suddenly noticed something amiss. The steam locomotive staff members who were in their seats still had their eyes open with their white showing and their faces pale. However, their mouths had closed at some point in time and were no longer showing their AT. I feel like like in Weapons, there's a scene where they're just sitting there and it kind of looks like they're smiling. Inside a luxurious hotel room, the wall's lamps shone brightly onto the carpeted region where a desk stood. Klein had transformed into German Sparrow and was sitting on a single seater. He had left his leg crossed over the right. Beside him was Enzo, who looked like a native. If you didn't get, basically Klein smiled with 8 teeth. Yeah, that's what I don't get. Why is Why is Klein with them? Like, why is Klein smiling with them? Basically, Klein smiled with 8 teeth. Then Terror started having the exact same smile as Klein, one after another, indicating that they were all turned into his marionettes. Is that what it is? So Klein turned all of them. So So not necessarily where the sacrifice is killed, the terrorists were killed. The criminals were killed. So Klein got rid of the criminals. That's what's going on, right? So now all the sacrifices are missing. See, that's what was confusing me for so long. I was like, why is Klein like why is Dwayne and Dante's on this ship, and why is everybody there? So what I thought somebody was using Dwayne's appearance to frame him. I thought we were gonna get like another arc where like somebody's being framed, or like where Dwayne is being framed as a killer. I thought that's what was going on. Okay. In front of him stood a row of cultist marionettes. Got it. Look, oh, right here. Next sentence. Beside him was Enzo, who looked like a native. In front of him stood a row of cultist marionettes. Okay, that cleared it up. This I just had to read one more sentence. In front of him stood a row of cultist marionettes. Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Damn, man. Double antis over here. There were the people involving and attempting to make a sacrifice in the same locomotive, the man with a lumpy cheek, the train conductor, and the train driver. They had circled from different streets, donning different looks together. Who made you do the sacrifice? Klein asked in a deep voice. Oh shit, right here. Okay, now that I'm reading, okay, now it's cleared up. I thought they were gonna frame Dwayne Dantes again, but now this makes more sense. After advancing to sequence 4 and becoming a bizarre sorcerer, not only was he able to read the thoughts of his marionette's superficial consciousness, he can read your thoughts. He could also use the indescribable control of spirit body threads to do things similar to spirit channeling. Of course, the higher the level of the marionette, the poorer the effect of the spirit channeling. After a brief silence, the conductor, who was clearly low and was rather thick body hair, said blankly, "It's a revelation from God." What God? Which God? Klein received the porcelain teacup from Enzo and took a sip. The train conductor replied in a gaze, "God is God. There are no others." The OG God? The omniscient, omnipotent God? Klein lowered his cup and asked, how did he reveal his revelations? What was said exactly? The conductor instantly turned relevant. He gave a revelation through a divine item. The requesting of us to sacrifice many lives to pleasure him and return he will give us eternal life to his kingdom. Kingdom? What would be his kingdom? Sacrifice many lives. Compared to the numinous episcopate, the Rose School of Thought prefers doing such things. They have always been infamous for blood sacrifice, but to have eternal life in God's kingdom is closer to the numinous episcopate believes. Of course, I can't eliminate the possibility that this was fabricated. Klein pondered for a moment and asked, what divine item? The train driver didn't reply as he glanced at the man with the red lump cheek. The man then took out an item from the inner pocket. It was a cloth doll of shabby craftsmanship with curved eyes and mouth. God will issue us commands at a specific time through it. I bought it at a flea market. The man with the lumpy cheek said slowly without any perturbations in his tone. This Klein instantly thought of many possibilities before getting Enzo to take the cloth doll and scrutinize it carefully, but he didn't discover anything odd. With the experience, this meant that the problem wasn't with the doll. This meant that there were two possibilities. First was someone was using the doll as a decoy while acting as a deity nearby. Second, it was a second possibility. It was truly a secret existence who had specifically labeled the item to send a revelation. If it's the former, the train's attendant's death would have been discovered and preparations would have been made. So the god would have realized who he was. If it's the latter, perhaps nothing had been detected. Oh, okay, never mind. So we're good. Klein contemplated for a moment and made Enzo place the cloth door on the desk in front of the window. He then stood up and instantly transformed into another train attendant and stood with a row of cultists. Similar changings happened when Enzo returned. After an unknown period of time, the night grew deeper. Suddenly, on the desk, bathed in the crimson moonlight, the cloth doll with the curved eyes and mouth moved its limbs and slowly stood up. Okay. Okay. All right, so now it's assumed we saved all the people. So all of them went home, and now the only dead bodies were all the cultist members. Got it. All right, next chapter, 968. It's called Descending Saint. Wait. We're gonna get people descend now. Okay. Next chapter, 968, Descending Saint. Chapter 968 is called Descending Saint. Descending Saint. The cloth doll turned its lifeless eyes before its body and stood straight up. It looked. Oh, that's what you mean? A Magoose arm. Well, yeah, we need to buy a Magoose arm. Yeah, for my mic. Because I'm literally just using a candle to balance this so it's closer. Yeah, we need a Magoose neck. Yes, the mic stand I'm trying to buy because it's thin and easier to move around. It's called like a goose neck. Yeah, but we're going to buy a Magoose neck. The cloth doll turned its lifeless body and said, before it stood up straight, it looked towards the area the crimson moonlight failed to illuminate. The man The man with a lumpy cheek and the other cultists had been standing quietly, but at this moment they bowed their heads, raising their arms as though they were praying, piously listening to the revelation. About 2 to 3 seconds later, the cloth doll finally stood up straight, just as it was about to open its tongueless mouth and produce a voice that didn't belong to the body. It was in all its movements suddenly turned sluggish, as though it was a highly rested robot. Hidden amongst the cultists, Klein had seen a strange spirituality thread extend from the cloth doll. Without any hesitation, he began controlling it. Inside the wall lamp illuminated room, the lights dimming instantly, the doll with curved eyes and mouths instantly lost the support that seemed to arise from having a skeleton before slumping to the table, motionless. Amidst the flickering street lights, there were more than 1,000 meters away. Klein lost control over the blob of the spirit body threads. The power that descended with the help of the doll took less than 2 seconds to escape out of his range. Whoosh. A biting cold wind. The biting cold wind swept again. A biting cold wind swept up inside the room as the rugs with the tables and chairs above suddenly tugged, sending the man with a lumpy cheek and most of the other cultists tumbling. Only the disguised Klein had jumped up in time to avoid the accident. Of course, Winter Enzo stood perfectly fine at the board of the rug, completely unaffected. Whoosh. Amidst the cold wind, the rug rolled up and bound a few cultists and covered their noses and mouths, tightly gripping their throats. Meanwhile, the foundation pens on the table had their caps removed autonomously before shouting forward, stabbing into the neck of the man with a lumpy cheek. They left no gaps in the dense arrays of pens. A wooden chair exploded as its splinters swept over without sparing any of the remaining cultists. Near the wall, the pipe of the wall lamp cracked, causing the gas lamp inside to whistle out. The cloth that draped out of the sofa rose up, tied itself into a rope, and wrapped around the trained conductor's throat. A few of the floor tiles flew up, stabbing a few cultists from below. Instantly, all the items in the room were filled with defensive capabilities as though they were attempting to kill all signs of life inside. Klein tried to dodge, but he had his shirt, pants, belt, coats, and hat seem to have a life of their own. They forcefully locked him down on the spot. Oh shit, just like, what sequence is this? I forgot. We've seen this before. This has at least happened twice when inanimate objects hold him down. Here, I already forgot what it was. Fuck, I already forgot what sequence this was. Perfect name, the Magooseneck. He hurriedly opened his mouth and let out a sound. Pa. He had mimicked the sound snapping fingers. Puppet, thank you. Scarlet Flame, it's like when all the shirts and cloths were like covering his face at the end of Volume 3, and then I forgot what it was in Volume 4. All the inanimate objects. Puppet, thank you. Alright, he had mimicked the sound of snapping fingers. Scarlet Flame searched out from his cloth, instantly blanketing his body and removing the restraints. At this moment, the cloth of another sofa rose up as though it was draped over someone. What if it's Sequence 4 prisoner? What if it's just Sharon just fucking around with Klein? Like, I just want to test how strong you are. And maybe she's already a puppet? At this moment, the cloth of another sofa rose up as though it was draped over someone. The strange scene reflected in Klein's eyes immediately as he trembled and turned off. He had been possessed by an evil spirit. Oh, maybe if we kill... If we can take out this person, we can take the characteristic and give it to Sharon. And then we still pay back Sharon with the puppet characteristic. The flames that soared up from before hadn't extinguished. They were burning away his clothes and flesh, only to reduce him to a pitch black paper figurine. Behind this paper... I was reading a little too quick. I'm getting lost. I'm stumbling over my own words. Behind this paper figurine was a pattern covered with feathers. It was a surreal and illusory feeling. This was the mutated paper figurine that had been tainted with artificial death's aura. Oh, this was the mutated paper figurine that had been tainted with the artificial death's aura. I forgot about this. I forgot this one was tainted. Klein knew that there was only 1 to 2 situations that were possible for the doll to mutate. One was that the entity disguised as a god was nearly and had sensed the deaths of the cultists. Hence, preparations were made via deliberate descent, laying a trap for the antagonist. Another was that the one using the doll was indeed some secret existence. He wasn't aware the sacrificial ritual had been foiled and descended at the predetermined time to give the next round of revelations. And regardless of which situation it was, it meant danger. Therefore, how could Klein perform unprepared? Based on the characteristics of descent or possession of the doll, he had already placed a paper figurine which had mutated because of the corruption of the artificial death's aura into the iron cigar case. He had maintained the level of his marionettes at the level of an ordinary person in order to lure the target into possessing him. At this point, the possession target of the god that the cultists worship had gone from Klein to the deep paper figurine, okay? So it was able to transfer from him to the deaf paper figurine. As the scarlet flames swept about, the pitch black paper figurine ignited as a pale white color spread abruptly, tinged up with a slight dark green color. A rather painful grunt sounded as a transparent afterimage flashed across a window tinted with the crimson moonlight. Almost at the same instant, the items that came alive inside of the room fell to the ground, returning to their lifeless state. As for Enzo, flames were swirling around him. At this moment, in the port city north of the southern continent, the residents were enjoying the comfort and warmth of their home and family at night. They didn't notice that their glass windows and the surfaces of the wall lamps would dim quickly before returning to normal. Alongside the dimming environment, the flames in the fireplace either intensified or dwindled. The remnants in the kitchen were ignited and snuffed out. Is that like when my theories burned the kitchen? The remnants in the kitchen were ignited and snuffed out. During this process, the glass windows in the room dimmed the most, and the fluctuatings in the flames kept happening. However, the believers in the room were praying to the primordial moon, paying no notice to what was happening. After an unknown period of time, the crimson moonlight brightened a little, as though covering the entire city in a light veil. Such brightness quickly returned to normal as a scarlet red flame flared up on a silver candle on a dining table. Enzo walked out of it as his body and face rapidly changed into German Sparrow. Just a moment ago, at that instant, when the crimson moon brightened, he had lost his target. No, not only possessing the Beyonder powers of a high sequence Beyonder of the Wraith pathway, but they can also borrow the power of the crimson moon. Regardless, these two aspects of one is only possible with a sealed artifact or mythical item. Klein muttered silently and came up with preliminary judgment. After the demigod who possessed the doll had been corrupted by the deaf paper figurine, he had believed that he had the chance to take his opponent down. To his surprise, the enemy's strength and means available to them were more varied and potent than he had imagined. The only thing he could confirm was that it was an angel. The strange and the level were far inferior to one. Just as this thought flashed through his mind, Klein left the dining room and entered the activity room. There were a few believers praying to the primordial moon. Unlike the cultists on the steam locomotive, they knew who were praying to, as though they were more formal members of the parish. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. Klein entered the room at an unhurried pace before they turned their heads when they noticed him. With the powerful illusion power of a bizarre sorcerer, they treated German Sparrow as an oracle that had descended upon them. They saw a bright moon halo at his head. The believers plopped to their knees in a devout prostration. Oh, they're prostrating. Got it. Klein didn't beat about the bush as he asked in a deep voice, "Who was the saint you met previously?" Although one of the believers was puzzled, he respectfully answered, "Oracle." Oh shit! What the fuck? The Shaman King? Clerman. Yeah. Well, so we know Shaman King is a sequence, but we also knew Shaman King Clerman referred to a high status individual. Okay, Oracle. It was Shaman King Clerman. Is Ellie barking? Shaman King Claremont, that was a familiar name. All right, the author of the Book of Secrets, isn't he long dead? He was alive in a time of over a millennia ago. Saints of the non-special pathway have no way of living that long. He joined the Rose School of Thought, but still believers in the primordial moon, but still believes in the primordial moon. Through some means, he had extended his life, or could it be that his sequence alone affords him a long life? I guess that can make sense. Shaman King. Klein's mind whirled as he recalled the origins of the name Claremont. A sailboat was docked by the pier as the faint moonlight illuminated the cabin's interior. A figure with frizzling black hair with white streaks in them walked out of the mirror. He wore a black robe with crimson patterns, and he had wrinkles. They were neither too deep or too shallow on his face. His eyes were bloodshot at this moment on the skin of his exposed, such as the black on the back on his head. His spores had exposed, producing white feathers. They were stained. Oh shit, so white feathers, okay? They had producing white feathers and were stained with pale yellow liquid. And that's fat oil. Now, you are still the head chef? You know it, bro. The elder's expression was somewhat warped as he was enduring pain. He quickly sat on the bedside, bowed his head, clasped his hands, and silently chanted. In his jarring voice, his forehead slowly cracked apart, revealing the red full moon that seemed to be embedded in it. The moonlight dispersed as he cloaked the elder, causing the white feathers on him to contract and recede into nothingness. But at this moment, his abdomen bloated up as though it was filled with liquid. Finally, his clothes, together with his skin, tore apart as blobs of flesh and blood covered in the white feathers flew onto the deck. After squirming for quite a while, it rotted and died. The elder looked up and slowly exhaled. His bloodshot eyes were filled with puzzlement. He muttered softly, "Death's blessed." Ugh. But death is no more. Early in the morning, You guys remember the song? Early in the morning, the church storms the mandated punishers who had taken over the case of the mysterious deaths of the steam locomotive staffs had received new intelligence. The missing conductor and driver, as well as a few suspicious passengers, had been found. Before long, this mandated pusher team followed the clues and found their targets. They were silently hung outside a building in a row. This is a provocation, the mandated puncher's captain growled through clenched teeth. But after they lowered the corpses and carried out their investigations inside the room, they saw that these people had been piously praying to the primordial moon in the activity room. Holding a rather diabolical ritual, apprehend all of them. The mandated puncher's captains issued a command. After a second of surprise, the believers of primordial moon seemed to regain their reason as they tried to resist. However, they were quickly suppressed, either dying or being injured in the process. The mandated puncher's captain surveyed the area and inexplicably said to his peers, "They don't notice a row of the corpses hanging at their doorsteps? Probably not." I have to burp. A member of the reader pathway thought and said, "Those corpses might have been left there to guide us to investigate the area." The mandated puncher's captain called himself down and nodded and thought, which church demigod passed by? Chapter 969, nice, is called Duke. Chapter 969 is called Duke. Back in Westboro, within the Odora family's villa, Emlyn White, who had been summoned, took off his hat and coat and entered the activity room to wait. In this room, there were a few other Sanguine members who had been called by the name to meet the important figure. After surveying the area, Emlyn picked a spot to sit in right beside the man with a nose so high that it almost seemed deformed. Adoring his cut face was brown hair and red eyes. He held a comic in his... Comics exist in this series. Series hanging people to dry. It's kind of gross, man. He held a comic in his hand, reading through it aimlessly. He was none other than other Sanguines who had provided Emlyn with the information about the ancient abandoned castle and the Lair Forest. His name was Ernest Boyer. What name? Ernest Boyer, a Viscount. Emlyn had planned on visiting the Viscount in the next couple of days, but he never expected to bump into him here. What a coincidence. After some careful consideration, he had said in deliberation, "Your Lordship, I would like to know where you obtained the intel regarding the ancient abandoned castle and the Lair Forest. Why did your client say that there were any ancient raves?" Ernie's eyes moved his gaze away from his comic and shot Emlyn a glance. "No, not at all." Emlyn didn't provide any explanation as he stubbornly emphasized his question again. "I'm just very curious of the source. It doesn't seem that simple." Ernie Boyer's closest comic and nodded slightly. "It's not a secret. I learned of it from Lord Nibs. To be frank, I've never heard of this before. I find it hard to imagine that there's such an ancient castle in the Lair Forest." Lord Nibs. Emlyn instructed he had some thought arise in him. "It's another test." I'm sorry, Lord Nibs is his grandfather? Right? And Lord Nibs has been alive since... Didn't we say like 2,000 years? Lord Nibs? He's been around since the 4th epoch, right? His gramps? But isn't such a test too dangerous? Fuck. Or am I confusing somebody else? No, I think I remember. I'm remembering, right? Maybe I'm not. You let me know. But isn't such a test too dangerous? It even needed Mr. Fool to resolve. Like more than, I think. Oh, okay. So it was more than 2,000 years. Yes, you're right. See, I didn't forget. It's even needed Mr. Fool to resolve it. Emlyn frowned slightly as he recalled the details he had contemplated previously. He probed, "Your Lordship, then why didn't you explore the ancient castle? I remember you being an archaeologist, and during this process, you'll be able to obtain the corresponding beyond ingredients of an ancient wraith. Lord Nibs told me that it's very dangerous. One shouldn't approach it unless they are at the level of Earl." Emlyn's mouth gaped as his expression fell into a daze. He then held back his anger and said with a surprised voice, "Then why didn't you warn me?" Emlyn laughed. "Isn't that obvious? How can a location with beyond creatures present wait, what a fucking asshole. He didn't say anything. Isn't that obvious? How can a location with beyond creatures present, one that's known by us and Gwen, still exist if not for special reason? Emlyn fell silent into days as Ernie added, "Normal reasoning should be like this. Ancient race might exist in some place in Diddlery Forest. People have encountered it before, but they were unable to find their origins. This means that finding those ancient races is a very difficult and troublesome affair. The time cost exceeds their values, which allows them to live to this day. I thought you'd easily discover the problem with the reasoning. Likewise for your client. If they had chosen to take action, they must have had possessed the corresponding confidence." At that instant, Emlyn felt the Viscount Earl made plenty of strain, and he could hardly rebuke him. He believed that it was because he and Miss Magician were too foolish, resulting in her slamming her head first into danger. It had nothing to do with him. The next instant, Emlyn felt embarrassed and frustrated, filled with anger towards himself. Finally, Emlyn figured out another problem. Earl is demigod. Nibs is from the 4th epoch. Blood race, internal feud. Regardless of whether the intel exposes any danger or not, Ernie's Boyer should have clearly informed me of this point because figuring out the level of danger, the source of danger, and how the danger manifested itself, it held immense importance in the subsequent exploration, one that can't be missed. He did it on purpose. Emlyn came to a final conclusion as his scarlet eyes narrowed. He raised his chin and said, "Indeed, it's easy to tell, but I'm more curious about the danger lurking in the ancient abandoned castle." Ernest picked up the black tea and nearly resembled the color of the blood and siphon. I'm not sure either. Lord Snips didn't mention anything. Emlyn's expression saying, just as he was about to make a derisive remark, he suddenly saw Odira Cosme walked into the activity room and look at him. Emlyn, it's time for the meeting. All right. Emlyn reined in his thoughts and pressed onto the bottom half of his vest. Standing up unhurriedly, following him down the stairs underground, he finally couldn't help but softly ask, Baron Cosme, who am I actually meeting? How should I address him? Cosme, who looked like a middle-aged gentleman, didn't hide the truth. He replied with a deep respect, Duke Oldmer. Duke Oldmer. Emlyn subconsciously straightened his back as he cast his gaze to the lamps on the wall. He appeared to use a reflection of the mental surface to check on his appearance. Oh, that actually felt good. Good back posture. What's up, username? I should really be doing good back posture. Give me a second, new stretch. He was one of the 3 dukes that held up the Sanguin, an ancient powerhouse who existed before the Cataclysm. Duke Oldmer. He was one of the 3 dukes that held up the Sanguin, an ancient powerhouse who existed before the Cataclysm. His title was Round Moon, with an age exceeding 3,000 years. He had once followed in the footsteps of ancestor Lilith. I thought Lord Nibs was the closest thing to Lilith, but now Oldmer actually followed the ancient ancestor Lilith. Okay. Without a doubt, this was synonymous with the history and the glory of the Sanguin. After passing several secret doors, Emlyn Cosme arrived inside a metal gray hall. This guy's shit, man. This guy's getting a little, just a little bit hyped up. Okay, all right. He is older than the ancient sun god. This race old as hell? What race? Oh, you mean Sanguin. Okay. I thought you meant me and Wiz are raced to see who finishes first. Dukes are higher ranked. The ground and walls were filled with green grass, flowers, and grain. Instincts were crawling between the plants, making Emlyn feel as though he had left the city and arrived somewhere rural. He felt life thriving all around him. Such a scene didn't seem too old, but on careful inspection, there were many strange points. The grass had mouth-like crevices with fibers flying out of them to capture the insects. The flowers used their leaves as the hands to harvest pollen for themselves. The grains were heavy and occasionally emitting wailing from the inside. There was a myriad spectrum of extraordinary insects. Some had snakes for heads, other birds. These things grew luscious in color. It was to the middle of the hall. Surrounding the area was a grave filled with exuberant spirits. Cosme faced the grave and reverently bowed. Your Grace, Emlyn, what is here? Good afternoon, Your Grace. Emlyn didn't don his usual arrogance and was in fact a little flustered. Inside the grave, a mellow voice which didn't betray its owner age chuckled. A very outstanding young Sanguin. Okay. Cosme, you may leave for now. Yes, Your Grace. Cosme bowed in respect and left the metal gray hall that was filled with freshness. Emlyn still there listening to the mellow voice from the grave. In the morning, Nibs informed me that you obtained the artificial vampire beyond a characteristic that corresponds to the Viscount title. Yes, but it has been corrupted and requires purification. Emlyn had to mention the need to remove the mental corruption, the beyond characteristics, because he believed that it was a trivial matter to the Sanguin. At the very least, Baron Cosme had previously confirmed that it was possible. Yo, what's up, dude? What's up, Red Devil? Long time no see, dude. Oldmer tearfully acknowledged, very well, I'll personally purify the characteristic. He paused before saying, although the Sanguin enjoys a long life, we will still mature and grow old. There will be new births and deaths regardless. Nurturing young men is necessary for any race. As for the excellent talent and outstanding abilities you have recently showcased, oh shit, they're hyping him up now. They have made you a target we place great importance on. Therefore, I personally came to meet you and give you some tests as to expedite your growth. So it was a test. Okay. Excellent talent and outstanding abilities. Emlyn raised his chin slightly higher once again. He then sighed inwardly. Indeed, just as Mr. Hangman determined, there will be a test and mission as well as an interview. Amidst his overflowing emotions, Emlyn replied reverently, I'm always prepared. Not bad. Oldmer's mellow voice sounded from the grave. Your next mission is to find the key members of the Royal School of Thought that are hiding in Backland. Ooh, okay. There are very few clues for this, and many situations require you to carry out the investigations by yourself. Royal School of Thought, they have a grudge with us and Gwen. They seem to be taking in some believers of the Primordial Moon. Emlyn actually knew quite a bit of the Royal School of Thought via the Terror Club, but he deliberately hid this without showcasing it. Yo, you gotta keep some secrets. And Lord of the Mysteries. Apart from taking in believers of Primordial Moon, they had in their possession one of the holy artifacts of us and Gwen. What? one of the holy artifacts of us and Gwen. It was something left by the ancestor. Wait, so they have something in their possession that belongs to Lilith that was originally in the Sanguine's possession. We need to retrieve it. There was a solemnity in Olimur's voice. Left by the ancestor, holy artifact of the Sanguine. Emlyn didn't hesitate to say, Your Grace, I'll work hard to find the key members of the Royal School of Thought in Backland. Olimur's voice turned mellow. Very good. Get me some intel for Cosme and Noel and seek out the incisive point. Emlyn was already eager to do so, but he still restrained himself, asking in deliberation, Your Grace, do you know about the abandoned ancient castle in Deliria Forest? Your wish to head there, it's very dangerous, Olimur said from inside the grave. Emlyn didn't explain as he directly asked, what kind of danger? Olimur chuckled. The ancient castle might be older than me, even older than the Lear Forest. So the castle has been there since before the forest and before him. I don't know who built it. I only know that there's something sealed underground and it hides an immense secret. Okay, that door. Okay, it's going to be a door of something. Any creature that approaches it will be in danger of being corrupted by the force within. Okay, corruption. I feel like that's the hint. We once imagined it was something to do with the abyss. Yes, but it's not. But the devil suffered corruption after being thrown into the ancient castle as well. So it's not. Turning crazy and chaotic from his cold and cruel demeanor. Then why didn't you attempt to open the seal figure out of the situation? Hell no. Emlyn mumbled inwardly but didn't say a word. Olimur didn't speak further as he entered the conversation and dismissed Emlyn. In the evening, Backland was covered in dark clouds as a drizzle began falling. Emlyn White wore a hat and walked under the sheltered veranda. His scarlet eyes locked on Viscount Ernie Boyers, who was browsing some antique stores. He was upset that Ernie's had given him incomplete intelligence so he could subconsciously tell him after leaving the Odero Villa. But after a while, he felt lost. He hadn't figured out how to deal with Ernie's or how to severe a lesson he should teach him. Oh shit! He's gonna teach him a lesson. All right, that's pretty hype. Chapter 970, as I forget to put the timestamp. It's called Talent at Soliciting Donations. After blankly following Ernie Boyers from a distance, Emlyn White gradually abandoned his thoughts. He glanced at the area beyond the veranda as the downpour grew in intensity. He couldn't help but think, how should I punish Ares? Although he had done so because he likely followed the orders or recluse, it's still despicable. As for Lord Nibs, I personally do not have the ability, but wait, once I become a marquis or a duke, I'll definitely make him pay the price. Miss Magician had already completed her exploration of the ancient abandoned castle. I'm not sure if Lord Nibs had sent some Gwen to monitor the area. From her tone, the description and feedback given by Mr. Fool, there was probably no monitors. Could it be that Lord Nibs didn't send any Gwen to the vicinity of the ancient castle? But what's the point? of such a test? Or could it be that they missed it because of some problems? Amidst his thoughts, Emlyn White felt that he needed to get someone to discuss the matter of punishing Ernie Boyers. He was severely lacking such experience. Subconsciously, the first candidate of choice that came to his mind was a hanged man. This senior member of the Terror Club was shown to be extremely experienced in various matters. He was extremely reliable and had never left other members disappointed. Ever hesitantly for a few seconds, Emlyn struck down this choice. This is because this matter involved the Sanguine's eternal test. To consult the Terror Club members before he obtained any answer damaged his pride and overall image of the Sanguine. By the same reason, he eliminated the world as a choice. Of course, he believed that he could guess the suggestion the world would give him. Kill him? There's no need to go that far. Emlyn mumbled inwardly as he aimlessly told Ernie's Boyer. He began expanding the candidates to the real world. Then he realized he didn't have anyone to choose from. He almost had 0 friends. That's sad. Verdura roofed and railed porch. Thank you, username. Then so he's telling him from a porch? Roofed and railed porch. So he's like on the porch, like Assassin's Creed, just tailing him. Then he realized he didn't have anyone to choose from. He almost had 0 friends. Eliminating his parents, who were sanguine as well, he only had 2 or 3 people in his mind. There were the Harvest Church Father Trotsky and Detective Sherlock Moriarty, who had a mysterious background and admirative means at his disposal. Sherlock hasn't returned after leaving Backland. I can only seek out Father Trotsky tomorrow, but I can't be that direct. Emlyn quickly made up his mind. He walked past Ernie's Boyers, who had entered a watch shop, and headed for the end of the he headed for the end of that rooftop veranda. He only have Sherlock and Father Trotsky. Man, he only got a priest and a detective for friends, who had a mysterious background and admired means at disposal. Where was the word? of the veranda where there were several rental carriages. Getting into the carriage, he felt the wheels turning. He casually glanced out the window, saw more raindrops striking the glance, drawing out the trails that stretched down. In the blurred vision, carriages drove past. Audrey retracted her gaze from the rainy scene outside the carriage and glanced at her lady's maid, Annie, before communicating with Susie silently. How am I still mispronouncing it? Audrey retracted her gaze from the rainy scene outside the carriage and glanced at her lady's maid, Annie, before communicating with Susie. Oh, right here. I said it right. Finally. Holy shit, man. Why am I mispronouncing it? Communicating with Susie silently, they looked in her eyes, her expression, and her not obvious body language said, "We're almost home. I'm a little nervous." On the ground, Susie shook her tail, raised her paws. Wait, Susie. Oh my God, man. What is going on? This is a one word. It's a one word. I mean, there's more, but I know. Susie shook her tail, raised her paws, and adjusted the gold-rimmed glasses hanging by her neck. Together with the changes in the colors of her ether body and body of heart and mind, she expressed herself. Yo-ho, what's up? Is that Brooke? Brooke in chat? Yo-ho. We're almost home. I'm a little nervous. On the ground, Susie shook her tail, raised her paws, and adjusted the gold-rimmed glasses and hanging by her neck. Together, so funny, she's wearing glasses. Together with the change in the colors of the ether body and body of heart and mind, she expressed herself. Don't worry, the Ma'am Escalante, who is a psychiatrist on the surface, is only a telepathist. She won't be able to see through your lies. Audrey nodded gently and watched her carriage and enter the Hall's family luxurious villa and stop in front of the sheltered door. Ever since joining the Low End Charity Bursey Foundation, she had begun spending less time at home. She had originally planned on meeting Ma'am Escalante from the Psychology Alchemist at 22 Phillip Street in Northborough. But since Mr. Dwayne Dantes had left the southern continent and wasn't in Foundation, there was no need for that. I skipped down too much. In the study she called her own, Audrey met Ma'am Escalante Oseleka, who had black hair reaching her waist and a baby face. I must apologize. I've been busy meeting up with friends and returning to Backland. My subsequent joining of the Low End Charity Bursey Foundation has delayed my meeting with you until today. After leaving Susie outside, Audrey elegantly bowed to express her attitude. In fact, this had been deliberate. By dragging out the meeting for another month, her digestion of psychiatrist's potion and advancement to the hypnotist became rather reasonable. It was a progress of one to expect what from a genius and nothing else. Escalante returned to the greeting without much thought. I heard that you have been busy with children who desire knowledge. You're virtuous and more dazzling than diamonds. As Audrey gestured for her to sit, she walked to a single seater and tearfully acknowledged, "Those children are in situations I've never seen before. There's often a voice inside me that's urging me to do something. Ma'am Escalante, if you're free, you can join me and the staff of the Low End Charity Bursey Foundation to go visit different schools. There you will get to see what most children in the world are experiencing." Having said that, she chuckled as though being I cannot pronounce this word for the life of me. As being self-depreciatory. I apologize. I've recently been accustomed to the kick-start such topics. It's because I wish for more nobles and wealthy to involve themselves in such charities. I hope you can donate more and help even more children. After hearing Audrey, Escalante replied somewhat uncomfortably, "I will do so. I'll also donate some money to the Low End Charity Bursey Foundation." No, I'm not forcing you to donate. This is to be an action that comes from the heart and something voluntarily. I only wish for you to take a look at and inform the people around you that these children plight and their possible futures. This includes the members of the Psychology Alchemist. Audrey shook her head, rejected Escalante's suggestion. All right, Escalante first nodded gently in agreement before feeling that there was something ridiculous in this matter. Miss Audrey's true motives were to solicit donations from the Psychology Alchemist. Good, man. Good for her. But this was a secret, extraordinary underground organization. This was no different from soliciting donations for the New Order. Audrey didn't continue discussing the matter related to the Low End Charity Bursey Foundation. Instead, she said, "Ma'am Escalante, I have something I'd like to inform you of." "What is it?" Escalante read the solemn joy, the pride from her actions and emotions. Audrey smiled and said, "I've already become a hypnotist." At that moment, Escalante suspected that Audrey had hypnotized her. She knew that Audrey had obtained the hypnotist potion formula previously. How long ago was that? "You should be able to determine that I'm not lying," Audrey said with a smile. Only then did Escalante snap to her senses as she asked in surprise and doubt, "You seem to have some extraordinary encounter. Is it to have the courage to make use of matters?" Audrey said things that couldn't be any truer. Escalante frowned and said with some hesitation, "You wish for the signified potion formula?" "Yes." "What do I need to do, or what price needs to be paid?" Audrey didn't hide her motives. Escalante looked at the beautiful blonde and green-eyed lady in front of her and deliberated. This is something that's up to me to decide. I will report it and try to arrange for you to meet with Hilbert and Stefan. She was referring to psychologist ad jewelry. Audrey telling secret cults to donate charity is like, no, but don't do it because I told you. Do it from the heart, you know? And that's a good scheme. She was referring to psychologist ad jeweler designer Hilbert Alucard and furniture merchant Stefan Hamp. I forgot there were jewelers and furniture merchants. That's who they were. Clearly, in this group, psychology alchemist members, Escalante was in a subordinate position. She's like, I want to see you're higher up. Audrey wasn't surprised by Escalante's reaction, but this didn't mean that their handling of matters wasn't without a problem. A Sequence 6 Beyonder who had to wish to advance was someone that requires deep importance to be attached in any secret organization. This was even the case with the Orthodox churches. There were people who were qualified to meet high-ranking members directly. This also meant that after advancing to hypnotist, Audrey was already an elite in the middle-ranking members of Psychology Alchemists. Her next goal was to become a quasi-high-ranking member. The person she needs to meet was a counselor of the Psychology Alchemists, and not Hilbert Stefan. She's like, I want to speak to your manager. As her thoughts flashed across her mind, Audrey deliberately showed some of her displeasure. Escalante actually noticed this and hurriedly explained, meeting Hilbert and Stefan is to confirm your condition before counselors meet you. In fact, with your present level, you should be leading a team and recruiting new members, but with your identity status and daily environment, we have canceled that plan, afraid that it would influence your normal day-to-day-ish life. Counselor, I wish how many counselors from Psychology Alchemists are in backline. Could it be the royal family consultant, probably? Hyven Rambens, Audrey nodded in thought and said, I can understand that will await your agreements. She then diverted the topic and asked with a curious look, Ma'am Escalante, do you know what's the name of the Sequence 5 potion of the Spectator Pathway? Psychologists, doctors, no. A medic? She's been able to treat people. Maybe a medic? Something, wait, no, now that maybe something getting closer to the word dragon. Huh. I don't know. Ma'am Escalante, do you know what the name of the Sequence 5 potion of the Spectator Pathway? Seeing this blonde, green-eyed young lady taking on such a demure pose, Escalante silently heaved a sigh of relief. I've once heard Hybrid mention... Oh, Dreamwalker! Okay. That makes a lot more sense. Dreamwalker... The angels' imaginations, they're in their dreamlike world where everybody shares one conscience. Okay, Dreamwalker, yes, dragons. Okay, this makes more sense. Dreamwalker, this is somewhat different from what I had imagined, or it could be that dream is just an analogy. To be precise, it should be subconscious walker. Oh, the subconscious walker? So Dreamwalker was the old name, and the new name would be more correlated to subconscious walker. Okay. Audrey didn't conceal her contemplation and analysis before directing her questions to psychology and various information. After having Escalante stay for dinner, she sent the lady to the door where she was on a carriage. At this moment, it was dark outside with gales roaring and rain pouring. Amidst the pouring rain, howling winds, and dark night, a steam sailboat hybrid was cruising through the safe sea route in the Berserk Sea with tourists on board. Klein had already left the southern continent and had returned to Desi Bay after Dwayne Dantes. Amidst the shaking ship, he suddenly woke up, got out of bed, and headed to the window of the first-class cabin's living room and looked outside. Amidst the downpour, 3 huge, strange, pure black sailboats were silently cruising over. Hanging on the sides were lanterns with 3 black sails on masts almost 100 meters long. Damn, that's a big-ass boat. And on its deck, is it Admiral Hell? Ludwell? Black ship. Nast. Nast ship was like 300 meters or something, like 300 feet long, 100 meters. And on its deck stood a modeled stone chair. Okay, yes, Nast, stone chair. That was 2 to 3 meters high, its back facing the cabin. No one was sitting on it. It was the Black Emperor, symbol of the King of the 5 Seas, Nast. Yeah. Okay, what is going on now? 971, Restraint. Chapter 971 is called Restraint. On the observation deck on the liner, the bulge was sounded. The bulge, the fuck? The bugle was sounded. It tore through the obstacles that put the wind and rain, awakening all the passengers on board. Unable to dress up in time, they could only don a coat of their pajamas. Rushing barefoot to the window to observe the situation outside, half of the passengers quickly saw a gigantic sailboat that didn't adhere to the common sense. They saw its 3 pitch-black sails and blobs of pale flickering yellow amidst the dark environment. Together with the howling winds, spattering rain, and the moonless and starless night sky, many passengers fell felt as though the ship was approaching from the hill, bringing with it an inexplicable sense of horror and dominance. After a brief pause and frenzy, a name surfaced in their minds: Black Emperor. Anyone who had been out at sea for some time, or the people who lived in the port cities and the various colonies, much more or less knew the existence of such a pirate ship. Sigh, may the storm be with you and me. May the goddess watch over us. Holy lords of storms. Holy lords of storms. I'm gonna start using that in my everyday language. As the passengers subconsciously made prior, they were filled with horror and helplessness. The passengers knew very well that the owner of the Black Emperor had the highest bounty of the 5 seas, in a particular sense of the king of the pirates, and a powerful figure who could remain alive despite the campaigns of the various fleets from different nations. He was definitely not someone the cannons and crews of the liner could resist. Holy Lord of Storms. I know. I'm liking this vocabulary. Holy Lord of Storms. This meant that they were about to fall into the hands of the pirates. Many women couldn't help but imagine being forced by the pirates and being sold to unfamiliar lands. Some trembled while others collapsed to the ground. Some rummaged for daggers or revolvers. It was unknown if they wanted to resist or they were unwilling to face the worst outcome. Having failed to find opportunities, some moved a clove rack to their side. The men didn't react any better, apart from the number of them drawing weapons in a bid to organize themselves to resist. By the remaining froze in the daze and sought places to hide. Others cursed the darn liner for the king of the 5 seas. Finally, the captain's voice boomed into the ears of every passenger via the boarding equipment or something else. Silence, don't be afraid. The owner of the Black Emperor has his own code. He's not like the other pirates. His subordinates can only plunder from items and wealths, nothing else. Such words were repeated a few times, and panicking passengers finally calmed down and no longer exhibited such horror. Compared to the outcome they had imagined, being able to live and not being forced was an excellent outcome. Almost a minute later, a number of passengers were overwhelmed with sadness and cried upon realizing how their hard-earned savings would be wiped out. Some of them were doing businesses through loans. They were unable to pay their loans. It was possible that their family would end up on the streets, relying on the workhouses for survival. Upon having this thought, they hurriedly took action and hid their wealth in all kinds of hiding compartments, hoping to keep as much as they could from any pirate. After doing this, they held their weapons tightly prepared to fight the pirates to death at critical moments. Even feral beasts would fight back when cornered. Why not humans? At this moment, many of the pirates of the Black Emperor were waiting by the board side according to their orders. They were prepared to jump onto the prey once the distance was closed. The second mate, Horror Viscount Bird Mustang, was holding a telescope as he observed the liner opposite him without much thought. He was inwardly calculating how much longer before the two ships met. This pirate, whose bounty had exceeded 10,000 pounds, wore an Intis stylish shirt with complicated patterns on his sleeves and collars. He donned a dark red captain's attire as though he was awaiting the commencement of a ball and not a pirate attack. Suddenly, his vision blurred as he could no longer see the liner. Bird Mustang hurriedly searched with his telescope, but regarding the direction he aimed at, there was nothing in the stormy waves and red-headed sea eagles who enjoyed hunting fish during the storms. Such a huge liner had vanished. It vanished? The fuck? The light in Bird Mustang's eyes flicked as he failed to make an accurate judgment. Where's the ship? Where did such a huge ship go? It was still around. The pirates on deck had also noticed something amiss as they examined. A ghost ship? No, there aren't any ghost ships with such a make. This is steam and sail hybrid that got popular in recent decades. An illusion someone had hidden the liner with a large-scale illusion. That is so cool, dude. An illusion and disco has to have been done by a demigod. Bird Mustang's thoughts raised as he retracted his telescope and headed for the cabin. That's so sick. He just hit it. During this process, the distance he traveled seemed to distort. In about 8 steps, Bird Mustang covered quite a sizable distance and arrived in front of the captain's cabin. He reverently bowed and said, Earl Nast, something abnormal has happened with the hunt on the Black Emperor, King of the 5 Seas. Nast continued, having himself addressed as an earl. It was as a title conferred upon him by Emperor Rizal. Of course, he had publicly announced that it was a matter of time before he established a pirate's kingdom, becoming a duke, king, or even an emperor. The Black Emperor, hell yeah. After a brief silence, a solemn voice sounded from the captain's cabin, circled around it. By our will, Bird Mustang didn't ask why he directly accepted the orders. Of course, he could imagine the reason. Be it an illusion or not, to make such a huge steam and sail hybrid liner vanish from the scrutiny of hundreds of pirates, it was definitely not something a low or mid-sequence beyonder could have accomplished. This ship definitely had a demigod powerhouse wielding a demigod-level sealed artifact. I wonder who. Must be a mystery for them. And to clash with an unknown demigod for an ordinary liner and not had launched any counterattack. This also implied that he didn't wish to clash with the Backland Emperor and the King of the 5 Seas. Therefore, he had only exhibited his existence for shock and awe purpose. Bird Mustang immediately got the sailors to leave the broadside and turned the Black Emperor around. At this point, a huge and heavy red red-headed sea eagle suddenly flew out of its flock and headed for the Black Emperor, spiraling above the ghost ship. Amidst the pirates confusing, the red-headed sea eagle looked down upon the deck and spoke deeply into a human's voice. I wish to meet Earl of the White Maple. Bird Mustang was taken aback for a second before he cast his eyes at the cabin. King of the Five Seas Nast's solemn voice sounded again. Instead of directly answering the sea eagle, he instructed subordinates, let him in. Bird Mustang immediately followed the orders of the sea eagle, swooped down in the storm. Its body gradually changed and turned into a humanoid form. When it landed back on the deck, it was no longer a red-headed sea eagle, but a man with a tall top hat and tuxedo. His face wore a feathered mask. A feathered mask? Bizarre. It's a bizarre seagull. Instead of bizarre sorcery, he's a bizarre seagull. Oh, shit. He's bizarro aura farming. Bird Mustang's eyes dilated as though he was trying to take in the figure clearly. I thought it said, bro, no matter how much. But no matter how much he observed it, he was unable to discover anything abnormal about this exaggerated man. It was as though there wasn't a red-headed sea eagle from the very beginning. A few seconds later, Bird Mustang's pupils dilated even more because he saw the figure side profile as it walked past him. The man who appeared like he was an invitee at a banquet was very thin. His side profile was about as wide of 2 fingers. I'm sorry, is this his new persona? His side profile was about the width of 2 fingers? At that instant, Bird Mustang felt as though he was seeing a walking paper figurine. Oh, never mind. But it was also slightly thicker than one. A monster, he gulped with great difficulty as he watched his terrifying demigod walk towards the cabin. The pirates on deck quickly retreated and leaned against the shipboard as though a nightmare had just walked past them. Shit. Thin shaming. To them, this abnormally protruded man was something they had never seen before. It was even more harrowing than the many monsters they had seen in the past. And the third story of the cabin, outside the captain's cabin, Klein held a handle, twisted it, and opened a door. The reason he had made himself appear so strange was practically due to having no choice, but it was also particularly deliberate. The former was because the red-haired sea eagle wasn't big enough, so after creating the clothes and making, there was no way to create a normal human body, even without the innards. The deliberate choice was because he was beginning to try out his theories on acting as a bizarre sorcerer. Very bizarro indeed. He had some ideas regarding this. The term sorcerer wasn't key, but what was key was to use methods of a sorcerer to appetize bizarre. With a light creak, the dark black door opened, revealing the interior of the captain's cabin. Candle lamps dropped down from above, with 41 on the left and 40 on the right in an asymmetrical manner. Candle lamps dropped down from above. This was the same thing when we were in Amon's tomb, right? 41 on the left and 40 on the right in an asymmetrical manner. And this ship did predate the 4th epoch, right? Or from the 4th epoch, Klein's Bizarre Adventure. I'm excited for Klein's Bizarre Adventure. At the end of it was a black platform rose up surrounding an iron black chariot. King of the Five Seas Nast figure was relatively normal. He was slightly taller than 1.9 meters, unlike the non-human form, which resembled a giant that Klein had previously encountered. He was still wearing a miniaturized crown with a black robe with silver ends. Damn. He had a squarish face with slight wrinkles. He had a short black mustache underneath his chin, and his black eyes swirled with red glow. It made one bow their heads without realizing it. I've never met you before, Nat said with a deep voice. Mr. Bizarro Sorcerer. Klein took off his hat and bowed. You know me now. Nast made his voice, which made spirit bodies tremble, resound inside the captain's cabin. Speak. Why are you visiting me? Earl, I wish to know of your impression of the Emperor Rizzo. Everyone knows that you and your father have met him in the past far more than once. Oh, shit. Klein replied without being affected. Nast swept the paper figurine like demigod as his dark red eyes brightened significantly. Have a seat first. Before he finished the sentence, Klein felt a potent suppressive force on him. His body involuntarily sat on the chair beside him. Oh shit. However, he was only here as a marionette. With a flick of his spirit body threads, the figure that was thin as a book had quickly restored its balance. Okay. The underground mausoleum where Medici was found, it also had 41 and 40 candlesticks. Yes, you see, that's what's confusing me. There's always been... Why isn't it evened? Why isn't it 40-40 or 41-41? 42-42? Why is it always 41-40? Very mysterious indeed. Chapter 972, Nast Memories. What the... Okay, Nast Memories. Chapter 972 is called Nast Memories. With the pressure relieved, Klein casually pulled a chair over and placed it by the door, sitting opposite the King of the Five Seas Nast, with the entire hall separating them. Although the Pirate King was more than 1.9 meters tall and was sitting on a black platform, allowing him to look down into a domineering manner, Klein didn't play second fiddle in his encounter. He wore his tall top hat again. After a brief silence, Nast, who had the official title of Earl White Maple, said with a solemn tone, "Give me a reason. Why should I answer your question?" Klein's thin body casually leaning back and said, "You will not need to hear the same request when you have something you need to trade with me in the future." The dark red light flickered in Nast's Black Emperor nice and Nast's black eyes as he said, "I basically know all the saints active in this world, but that doesn't include you." Klein cursed the feathered mask on his face and laughed. Without answering, he asked in turn, "Have you met Zaratul?" "I've met him twice in Emperor Rizal's palace. I'd also interacted with quite a number of Secret Order members." Nast replied with a calm and direct but extremely domineering tone. Oh shit, we're trying to see who has a bigger aura energy here. I don't know. I just don't know the numbers. Not the meaning. I just like saying it to Oral V readers. Damn, I also haven't read Oral V in a while. "Quite a number of Secret Order members. You should introduce me to them when the opportunity arises." Klein couldn't help but quip. He then smiled and said, "I've also met Zartul." Nast raised his hand to stroke his short black beard. His already tall figure seemed to burgeon, making the mood in the captain's cabin even more gloomier, and replies. After a few seconds, he stared at Klein from above and said, "My impression of Emperor Rizal is very simple. No one is more suitable than him to be the Black Emperor." Roselle? No one is more suitable than him to be the Black Emperor. So Rizal might come back, because Black Emperors have a way to come back, even in death. As long as you have believers, or you still have like your kingdom still standing, or what, like if you still have believers, or like if your things are still in place and there's still a way for you to come back. He didn't explain what Black Emperor meant or pointed to, ignoring if the demigod opposite him understood or not. Is that so? From the King of the Five Seas Is that so? From this King of the Five Seas words, although the Emperor's diary implied that he made up his mind only in later years to switch to the Black Emperor pathway and to make preparations, he had long had such inclinations. He had unconsciously exhibited it and set up the situation ahead of time. Klein thought of enlightenment. He believed that Nast's impression of Emperor Rizal was limited to that. After all, they had only met a few times, hence he switched topics. In the Emperor's later years, did he get you or your father to do something secret? Nast's crown shook a little as he replied, "Someone had once asked me the same question." Klein laughed and asked with a bold guess, "Bernadette." Yes, Nast held the two sides of his black throne with his hands. Back then, she was very young and immature to ask such questions. With Klein Rizal's level in his later years, compared to handling something secret to me and by my father, what could be kept more secret than doing it himself? This is implying that I'm an immature as Bernadette back then. Klein sat and said, "To people who are concerned about this, one wouldn't abandon even the slightest silver hope." This was also why he wished to meet King of the Five Seas after concealing the liner, who was now trying to find clues to the door of light above the gray fog in the real world. Apart from confirming who the third transmigrator was, he had to delve deep into Emperor Rizal's matters. This was a necessary decision. The dark red glow in Nast's eyes contorted and expanded. "What's your relationship with Emperor Rizal?" Klein thought and said with a sigh, "We can be considered old friends. No better than my goat Glazer Algartha." After all, they had been above the mysterious door of light, and the cocoons there were in the neighbors with only a thin obstacle in between them. They had been hanging there for centuries or even a millennia. This was a connection that stemmed from reality and psychologically. Having read so many of the Emperor diaries, Klein had long treated the Emperor as a fellow countryman. He shared the same feelings from home and sense of identity with him. Nast stared at the thin demigod who sat by the door before retracting his gaze and solemnly said, "Any more questions?" Klein was already prepared. He asked in an unhurried tone, "Do you feel that there was anything abnormal about Emperor Rizal in his later years?" The slightly wrinkled Nast remained silent for quite a while before saying, "I don't know enough about him, so I wasn't able to notice anything abnormal. The only thing that made me feel odd was when me and my father met him, he would stand at the floor-to-ceiling window facing west." He faced west. There's something west. Isn't that the way of the abyss? Isn't the Foxy west? He would stare into the distance. It would happen in the morning, noon, and the evening. And the room wasn't the only one a floor-to-ceiling window. West. Oh! I fucking knew it! West. Into the distance, the Foxy. When he looked into the abyss. Klein seemed to mutter to himself as though seeking confirmation. He recalled that Emperor's diaries had maintained mention of the mysterious primitive island, and he recalled the abyss that hid somewhere in the Foxy. Okay. Maybe we are getting the abyss this volume. Somewhere in the Foxy. Ooh, everything goes back. Bro loves the Abyss a bit too much. Everything goes back to the Abyss. Okay. All right. All right. Now this is getting very mysterious indeed. Why is he always looking towards the Abyss? Nast nodded slightly and said, that was my guess as well. Klein silently exhaled. After some consideration, he stood up and said, I'm done with my questions. Please pardon me for your intrusion. Your lordship, I wonder if I can help you in a transaction. He was fulfilling his promise. Nast fell silent for 2 seconds and said, help me find the card of blasphemy that corresponds to the Black Emperor? Shit. For an instant, Klein suspected that the Pirate King was testing him, but he immediately felt that an unknown demigod had little to do with the Black Emperor card. He said with a smile, I'll try my best. However, the question from before aren't worth a card of blasphemy. If I can obtain it, I'll trade you for the information inside it. Of course, I might only provide clues to that card. Nast cursed the armrest of his iron black throne and said in a deep and deadpan manner, so be it. Klein took off his hat again, bowed and turned to leave before returning to the deck. Under horror, Viscount Bird Mustang accompanied his gaze. He raised his arms. His body rapidly contracted as the feather mask on his face spread out. In just 2 or 3 seconds, his entire person became an ordinary red-headed sea eagle. The sea eagle immediately flapped its wings, flying into the dark storm, vanishing from the sight of the pirates of the Black Emperor. That's a demigod. Bird Mustang looked into midair and sighed like, that's a badass demigod. He just looks at the sea eagle. Although making a further advancement at sequence finding... An eagle? Huh. Are you telling me this is Klein right here? Look at this. The sea eagle was in our face the entire time in the season 1 artwork. Look at that. I understood that reference. I feel like you guys probably understood that reference as well. Look at that. Look at that. The more you know. All right, let's keep reading. Although making a further advancement at sequence 5 increased the inclination towards madness and a loss of control. Freedom. A loss of control. Amen, brother. Although making a further advancement of sequence 5 increased the inclination towards the manners and the lost control, making it highly possible for Beyonders to fail their advancement, the title of being a demigod remained attractive. Attractive, indeed. As long as one subconsciously took a step, they could attain godhood, allowing their life to undergo a fundamental change. Be it in terms of lifespan or powers, it far exceeds that of humans, allowing them to reign above all. Under the liner, Klein abandoned his control over the red-headed sea eagle, allowing it to plunge into the sea to be fish food without anyone seeing it. And at this moment, the passengers on board felt high-strung because the Black Emperor was about to approach. Oh. And what sound does a bird make? Caw-caw? In fact, this should have happened a few minutes ago. This reminds me of some Attack on Titan stuff. If you guys have read Attack on Titan, you know what I'm talking about, but that's kind of funny. Everybody becomes a bird at the end, huh? In fact, this should have happened a few minutes ago, but for some reason, the Black Emperor had ignored the liner and headed forward. Yet the liner didn't use the opportunity to escape, and it instead circled around the Black Emperor, maintaining a few hundred meters from it. This bizarre situation continued for a while before it finally ended, leaving dozens of meters between the two ships. The Black Emperor passed... Are we recording? Yes, we are recording. Wait, I understood that reference. Oh, were you guys making a Caw-Caw TV reference? Oh, that's funny. This bizarre situation continued for a while before it finally ended, leaving dozens of meters between the two ships. The Black Emperor passed the liner and steered into the stormy night without returning. The passengers and crew watched blankly and realized that the reality of the situation only a few minutes later. The Black Emperor was gone. It hadn't attempted to plunder them. A number of passengers cheered while the others had tears steam down their faces. A few collapsed to the ground and relaxed. Only a few maintained their lucidity, feeling puzzled as to everything that had happened. However, they were unable to find an answer that agreed with the situation at hand. All they could do was console themselves. The Black Emperors must have completed a plunder already. Since this is a liner and not a cargo ship, it didn't catch its eyes. At the euphoria spread across the ship, Klein, donning the appearance of Dwayne Dantes, cast his gaze to the north. Compared to the King of the Five Seas, Nast, who had only met Rizal a few times, there was another person who knew Emperor Rizal even better, Queen Mystic Bernadette. Now we gotta go talk to her. Being an equal peer to Nast, she had recently been in Backland. After return to Backland, I'll get Admiral Stars to contact Queen Mystic and try to meet her as soon as possible. Klein retracted his gaze, drew the curtains, and went to bed. In the roasted archipelago waters on the future, Admiral Stars Cat Leah finally received a letter from Queen Mystic Bernadette. She had no idea where the invisible messenger arrived, but this didn't stop her from infusing her joy. Tearing open the envelope and spreading open the letter, Cat Leah eagerly read the first line below before the salutation. That's indeed Seal's descendant. Indeed, Seal's descendant. That artisan is really Emperor Rizal's direct descendant. Okay, so it is confirmed. Yes. I can't allow him to mix with the believers. We knew this, but now it's like we're double downing again. Like, yes, this is a fact. I can't allow him to mix with the believers of the primordial moon. I have to bring him on board of the future. As Katlia thought, she nodded indiscriminately. After making up her mind, she thought of the artisan Seal's characteristic and morals that only spelled trouble. She felt that she had the responsibility and duty to discipline him. Amidst her deliberation, she walked to the window of the captain's cabin and cast her gaze outside. After some searching, her gaze fell onto the shipboard where Frank Lee was munching on mushrooms. Frank, Katlia shouted out with her normal tone. Frank, who had his sleeves rolled up, snapped out of his thought. Captain, is there something? Katlia, and seriously, I'll get an assistant for your experiments. Frank was taken aback before he revealed a pure smile. All right, wait. I'll get you an assistant for your experiments? Are we making Seal Frank's assistant? What the fuck? Is Frank's new assistant Seal? Wait. A new angel? We're getting a new angel? Wait. Walk it back. Wait. A new angel? Oh, okay, I'm stupid. It's not a king of angel, but just like a new angel. Okay, let's keep reading. Let's update this. 973. It's called New Angel. Oh, we're talking about... Okay, we're still on the ship. All right, but chapter 973 is called New Angel. Upon seeing Frank's smile, Katlia had mixed feelings. She retracted her gaze and turned it into the nearby fishing village where the future was docked. No one expected this place to be an important base of the Moses ascetic order. To avoid the pursuit of the Aurora order, Katlia and her crew had been docked here recently. She wasn't in a rush to set sail, but wasn't prepared to go ashore. She planned on using the equipment in the fishing village to make contact with her subordinates who was monitoring artisan Sealf and Bayam. Through that, she can confirm the situation and make plans. Only with this in place could the future set sail again. Headed for the captain of Roach's archipelago, Bayam, that was several days ago. In the backland, the sky brightened, especially early in July, but the overall temperature wasn't considered hot. It didn't even exceed 30 degrees Celsius. Elman wore a top hat to shelter him from the sunlight that penetrated the clouds as he disembarked a carriage and walked over in the harbor's church. Looking over, he saw the mountain-like Father Trotsky, who wore a brown priest robe and a clergyman's bonnet. He was standing in front of the scarlet emblem of life, preaching to the few believers that came to pray in the morning. Emlyn didn't take a second look as he walked straight to the back of the cathedral. He arrived in a room that he called his, and he familiarly changed it into the priest robes. Frank Lee is getting a new assistant. Yeah, it's a new guinea pig. I'm scared. I'm scared for him, dude. As he whipped the candle stand, he walked for the believers to leave. About 20 minutes later, he finally found an opportunity to sit beside Bishop Petrosky and mutter to himself while looking at the sacred emblem of life. Father, I have a question I would like to consult you about. The thin brown, light, blue-eyed Bishop Petrosky with some clear wrinkles replied with a smile, "Go ahead." Emlyn held his breath and verbalized the words as he had been thinking over the entire night. If, and I'm saying if, there's a distant relative who fools you, making you and your friend fall into danger and almost lose your life, at this matter isn't suitable in the court, how would you punish him? Despite sitting down, Trotsky remained like a hill. He said in a deep but gentle voice, first you have to confirm if the relative had made a mistake due to negligence or if he had deliberately fooled you and led you into a trap. If it's the former, you need to warn him, remind him, and teach him instead of thinking of punishing him. If it's the latter, you still need to confirm if that's the way he usually does things. If it is, then you need to eliminate him. Otherwise, he will definitely bring more harm to others, bringing harm to the innocents. By ending his life and sending him back to the land, shit, it will restart the cycle of life. It's a type of compassion and a type of purification. Putting him back in the land, return him to Earth's embrace, Father. Fuck, man. Damn. If it's the latter, you still need to confirm if it's the way he usually does things. Wow. It's a type of... I find this part crazy. It's a type of compassion and a type of purification. Elimination, Father speaks of murder in a way that's more natural, mellow, and calmer than the world. Emlyn's facial muscles twitched as he hurriedly interrupted Trotsky's reply. No, he usually doesn't act this way. It's just that due to the various reasons, he had targeted me this once. I don't wish to kill him because of this. Just as he said that, Emlyn froze. He had apparently most likely just expressed the fact that he was the victim, expressing that his matter was a sanguine internal matter. Trotsky turned to look at him and revealed a smile. Not bad. You already understand how precious life is. Emlyn forced a smile. Oh no. 973? Did shit go down? Chapter number? Oh yeah, 973. Then how should he be punished? Let's click on this. Then how should he be punished? Then how should he be punished? Uchowski looked at the sacred emblem of life in front of him. I do not advocate appealing to violence. You can bring him here and have him listen to my preachings and reading the Bible. He would understand the value of life and experience the compassion of the Earth Mother. He will serve to redeem his sins. Isn't this what I experienced? Yeah, we should bring him here. Emlyn was taken aback before realizing that this method was in line with his intentions. Oh, we're gonna have another Uchowski believer. This neither caused Ernie's Boyer's death, nor was it comparable to simply beating him up and demanding compensation. More importantly, this wouldn't escalate to a conflict that would cause strife amongst the Sanguine. Of course, every method has its flaws. To Emlyn, the biggest problem was, how was he to bring Ernie Boyers to the Harvest Church? Let me skip the song, because I feel like this is going to be the battle music later. Oh, no, it's still. I'll just skip it. From the moment he began doing volunteers work here, all the Sanguine and Backland knew how to avoid this region. Ernie's board was no exception. It was impossible to trick him into coming here. New Sanguine priest? Oh, it's going to be funny when that happens, huh? New Sanguine priest. It was impossible for him coming in. And if he resorted to violence, Emlyn believed that with the ring bestowed to him by the ancestor Lilith, as well as Miss Magician's power spellbook that could be rented, defeating Ernie wasn't a difficult endeavor. However, to control him wasn't simple. After all, he was a Sanguine Viscount, equivalent to that of a Sequence 5 Beyonder. In addition, although Ernie Boyers wasn't too old, he had quite a collection. Under such circumstances, the extent of which to directly take action was hard to gauge. It could easily lead to death, and Emlyn would be blamed for it. Perhaps I need some help. And Backland, there are many members of the Turret Club. If we work together, we should be able to easily control Ernie's. I can't expose my identity because of this. The cooperation should be done in stages so that we don't have to meet. Amidst his thoughts, Emlyn had made his decision. He planned on assigning a mission during the Terra Gathering next week in search for help. He nodded gently in response to Father Uchowski's suggestion. It sounds pretty good. I plan on making a decision a few days later after calming down. Father Uchowski nodded and smiled. Fruits are obtained from planting them. It's a long process that requires patience. From the looks of it, you have understood at this point. Of course, it's such a simple principle. Emlyn raised his chin slightly as he habitually clasped his hands and prayed to the sacred emblem of life. 22 Phelps Street, Low and Charity, Bercy Foundation. Audrey placed a document in hand on the table and looked up at the wall clock in the director's office. She could hardly relax. She had already made an appointment with Escalante to head over with Stefan Hamfis' residence in the afternoon. Clearly, this meant a test. If the Psychology Alchemist team was careful enough, they would have already reported the news, and there might have been a counselor secret observing everything. Based on her current level and abilities, although Audrey was unable to determine how terrifying a high-sequence spectator was, she could imagine the kinds of performances that had in certain domains. This made her uncontrollably nervous, afraid that she would be seen through. In fact, I should have delayed it a little, although the time and the emotions I showed are in line with the logic and psychology. Delaying a meeting would definitely incur suspicion, but compared to a little bit of suspicion, it's more important to wait for Mr. World to return from the southern continent. That way, I can directly arrange for them to meet at the Foundation. I don't have to worry about a high-sequence spectator discovering anything. Sigh, Audrey, your plans weren't well thought enough. Audrey sighed silently and cast placate on herself to calm her emotions. Of course, it's such a simple principle. Of course, it's such a simple one, right? After the afternoon, she wasn't in a rush to leave the Low and Charity Bercy Foundation. Sitting inside her office, she bowed her head and clasped her hands together as she softly prayed to Mr. Fool. After completing this, she got onto the carriage with Annie and Susie, heading for the residence of the furniture merchant, Stefan Hampris. Just as the carriage began moving, Audrey suddenly saw a gorgeous beam of light appear. Amidst the beam of light, a 12-winged angel bathed with golden light. Just as the carriage began moving, Audrey suddenly saw a gorgeous beam of light. Is this the new angel? Amidst the beam of light, a 12-winged angel bathed with golden light descended. The wings, which were made of flames, had wrapped her in layers before they dissipated layers after layer. Audrey's vision quickly recovered as she swept her gaze past Annie and Susie through the corners of her eyes in an unnoticeable manner. She realized that they hadn't noticed anything that had happened, only she sees it. It's a little different from the previous angel. With Mr. Fool's greater reawakening, his angels have also recovered further. As the corners of her lips quivered, Audrey wiped the smile from her face. Her inner heart became abnormally firm. In less than half an hour, her carriage stopped by Stefan Hamper's door. After passing her hand to Annie, Audrey was helped down the carriage, and she walked straight to the door. She watched as her attendant pulled the door. Before long, Escalante came to open the door. Like before, she directly brought Audrey to an activity room on the first floor. Annie and Susie were brought to the living room by the servants. Upon arriving at the activity room, Escalante reached out to hold both the doorknob as she gestured for Audrey to enter. This Audrey had guessed, but she didn't show it. She slowly walked through, which Escalante had opened. Escalante didn't enter as she closed the activity room's door. Audrey looked ahead and saw that a single seater facing the activity room, there was an elder sitting there quietly. An elder? Would this be the higher up? The elder wore a shirt, vest, and a jacket matched with blue-gray trousers with line adoring it was a dark red bow tie. His hair was completely white and remained thick and lush. He had a warm and elegant bearing. He had a pair of blue eyes that seemed to hide wisdom and knowledge. Apart from the wrinkles on his forehead, he didn't have any wrinkles elsewhere. Audrey knew him. He was a royal family's consultant, so it was a royal family consultant. Hyvan Rambus. Of course, Audrey had long known of this old gentleman's secret identity from the Terry Club, a counselor of the psychology alchemist. Yes. I lied. I don't remember this. This was mentioned in the Terry Club. A counselor of the psychology alchemist. She didn't disguise her surprise because she truly was surprised. Although she had guessed the possibility of the Hyvan Rambus appearance, she never expected him to appear directly. She imagined that he would observe her in secret, allowing Hilbert and Stefan to speak on his behalf. You're very surprised, Hyvan Rambant asked with a faint smile. He then stood up and bowed. A pleasant meeting you, Miss Audrey. Audrey deliberately opened her mouth before closing it again. Following that, she replied with a mixed smile, I'm not sure how I should address you. Hyvan Rambus chuckled. Like always, he pointed to the sofa beside him. Let's have a seat. Audrey took a deep breath, wore a smile, and unhurriedly walked over. Sitting by the sofa, she maintained an adequate distance from him. We just read the chapter. Oh, wow. We read that so quickly. Next chapter, 974, is called Mind World. But thank you for cleaning that up, Varsh. It was the one that tried to kill Klein. Or just pin everything on Klein. Chapter 974 is called Mind World. Having Rambus picked up the porcelain teacup and took a sip, looking at Audrey, who sat in a flawless posture, he said generally, there's no need to act so reserved. This isn't our first meeting. I still recall discussing Berman's philosophy of the ethics and Kongsoka pragmatism with your 2 years. Audrey smiled faintly and said, I just find it difficult to put the idea of you and a psychology alchemist counselor together. Having Rambus hadn't introduced himself, but it was a reasonable inference based on Audrey's knowledge of the psychology alchemist in the present situation. Hyvan crossed his right leg and said with a smile, this isn't something worth paying attention to. Never forget that our psychology alchemist is an organization established with the goal of studying the psyche and to build knowledge. We're more about the academic side of things rather than handling matters. Hence, since it's academic, you can always treat the counselor as a university's professor. If she hadn't learned from Mr. World that Hyvan Rambus was behind Charon's unaliving, Audrey would have been able to conclude that he was a knowledgeable man. Got it right here. This is where it brings it up again. Oh my god, thank you. Was a knowledgeable, amiable, humorous, and humble scholar regardless of the amount of observation she did. However, since she was wary, Audrey wasn't someone who would so easily believe things that appeared on the surface. As she looked at him and organized her words, she prevented herself from focusing too much on one point. She kept her thoughts lively and scattered to prevent herself from being hypnotized. At this moment, her mind suddenly turned adrift. She seemed to see the 7 pure lights that contained infinite knowledge and the dense, indescribable figures. She saw them blanking everything from high above. This is the spirituality sky? That's new. This was the spirituality sky, the reflection of the spirituality in one's mind. Okay. And beneath the spirituality sky was a deep, dark sea. Every drop of water resembled a point of light as though they represented an imprint on each subconscious. Okay. The subconscious Wonker. Okay, all right. I'm seeing the connections here. Near the sea were several islands. One of them belonged to Audrey. Her mind? She clearly knew that this was a manifestation of her consciousness, okay? What was exposed above the sea, which she could detect, and the parts covered by the seawater, were her deeper consciousness that she was usually unable to grasp or know. Floating above the island, Audrey looked to the bottom. She first noticed that the air was solitary, quiet, gray blur. The screened out her vision, making her only capable of seeing the massive and dark black outlines of the subconscious, as well as the illusionary and rippling sea of the collective subconscious. She was unable to obtain much information from that. Audrey was puzzled as to how she had entered this strange state when she saw large swaths of gray split apart like the sea deep in the sea of subconscious at the island level. It's revealed that a stone platform had appeared at some point in time. On the platform, a figure grew up rapidly in a fashion akin to blinking, entering Audrey's field of view almost instantly. His hair was completely white, but it remained thick and lush. He wore a standard 3-piece suit matched with blue-gray fog trousers with linen adoring it, as well as a dark red bow tie. This man was deep wrinkles on the forehead with none other than Hyven Rambus. Compared to the Hyven sitting on the sofa, he had appeared more sinister. He didn't wear a smile, and his head was slightly bowed. It was as though he was observing Audrey's subconscious that lay behind. In a few steps, he walked into Audrey's island of consciousness through the sea of the collective subconscious. Then he went from the subconscious. There's a lot of consciousness going on here. I feel like I'm telling you, this is like Inception, dude. Then he went from the subconscious to the area that exposed above the sea like a silent visitor who didn't knock on the door or receive any permission. After arriving on the island, Hyven Rambus raised his head. His facial skin was already covered in gray-white scales. His irises were gold and vertical, and it didn't show any hint of emotion. This, floating in midair, Audrey observed the scene and fully understood the situation she was in. This was a world of the mind, a mind world formed by the spirituality sky, a sea of collective subconscious, and the island was the consciousness. Whew! Due to the blessings from Mr. Fool's angel, Hyven Rambus' instruction of my body of heart and mind and psyche through the sea of collective subconscious sounded alarms. That force has separated my most fundamental part of myself of my self-consciousness, allowing me to control everything on that island from my spirituality sky. Whew, shit, man. Okay, there's a lot of consciousness going. Yeah, I have a bad memory. I thought he was the guy from Volume 1. Is it? Thus, I'm able to truly resist true forms of telepathy. How magical, now how despicable of Hyven Rambus. He's not polite at all. He intruded into my house without gaining any permission or providing any notification. Andre grumbled in midair. After understanding her current situation, she secretly controlled the changes that were influencing the island while answering the casually seated Hyven Rambus in the real world. I'm also very reserved when facing university professors. As she spoke, Audrey made her inner island mumble. This isn't a good analogy. As an elderly psychology alchemist counselor, he should be a sequence 4 at least. This is the demigod, one that naturally makes one feel fear, awe, and reserved. On the cell phone, Hyven Rambus chuckled immediately. Easy circuit getting a little fright, just a little bit, but no, we're good. We're good. This is it. Once they start spamming the word conscience and subconscious, like repeating, like whoa, wait, which is which? Like it gets a little hard, but we're good. This isn't a good analogy. I read this. Then I won't be forcing you. I've heard about you from Helbert. I heard that you've advanced from a psychiatrist to a hypnotist in a short few months. I'm very curious about how you did it. Oh, I've also heard of the answer you gave Escalante, having the courage to make use of matters. However, I wish to hear something more detailed. At this moment, the Hyven Rambus of Audrey's mind island was observing his surroundings with a deadpan expression, listening to the resonating voice. Audrey was already prepared for this as she deliberated and pretended to organize her words. After a few seconds, she said, it's just a superficial meaning of having courage to make use of matter. Let's put it this way. In my future plans, I've always had one of my options of being a psychiatrist. Since I've acquired the corresponding Beyonder powers, I was definitely very happy to try it out and help the people around me resolve their mental and psychological problems. While saying that, she showed some signs of embarrassment towards such actions that bordered on childishness. Her mind island faithfully reflected this. Number 1? Hell yeah, number 1. I just realized I never updated this. After a pause, Audrey continued. During this process, I discovered that my control over the potion's powers became better until one day I felt something in me shatter and fuse into my blood. It also allowed me to vaguely see illusory stars. Mr. Rambus, what does it represent? For some reason, I finally decided to become a hypnotist from that day. This might also be a cue from my subconscious. After saying that, Audrey deliberately stuck onto her tongue on her mind island, like when she was little, doing things she usually wouldn't do. It was a way to prove that she was feeling a little embarrassed because playing psychiatrist was no different from playing princess when she was little. And embarrassment often meant the truth. Hyven Rambus nodded and gently said, very talented. You seem to have figured out the acting method by yourself. Acting method? What is that? Audrey wore a surprised blank look both inside and outside before coming to realization. Hyven Rambus said with a genuine smile, it's exactly as you think it is. By acting based on the potion's name and concluding the corresponding principles that will speed up the digestion of the potion, it is an effective method for reducing the negative influences. However, before Sequence 6, we do not teach it because we do not advocate members using the method to accelerate the digestion of the potion. Surprisingly, you have figured it out yourself. Why don't you advocate it? Audrey asked sincerely out of curiosity. Having Rambus sigh and said, this will make the members not be themselves. Some might even be assimilated by the remnants of the potion. To put it simply, the first 3 sequences are for one to slowly grasp their powers and get used to being extraordinary. It allows one's subconscious to be deeper, becoming clearer and turn more mature. It aids in resisting the subsequent problems that come from the acting method, okay? Of course, I can only give my opinion on the spectator pathway. As for the other Beyonders, I'm not too sure if they're the same. But clearly, pathways that focus on the domain of the mind would have some differences in the area of the self-consciousness. Audrey was unable to determine the veracity of Hyven Rambus's words. She felt that there was definitely some reason to it, but it was not entirely the truth. Little Sun mentioned before, the one key thing to remember regarding the acting method is to remember that you are only acting. I find this more appropriate. Yes, I've been strictly abiding to it and will keep doing so in the future. Audrey, you mustn't be careless. From this moment forth, you must put more emphasis on your self-consciousness. From Mr. Fool's point of view, this must be trivial and don't require additional emphasis since it included the statement of only acting. But to the ordinary person, perhaps it's relatively more important. As Audrey's thoughts raised, she asked, can you explain the acting method in more detail? Hyven Rambus explained it to her in a relatively more detailed manner before saying, you are indeed talented and qualified to obtain a Sequence 5 Dreamwalker potion formula. But before that, I'll give you several missions. This is out of the fairness and also a form of training for you. This is because once you achieve Sequence 5, you will be leading 2 to 3 psychological discussion groups. Your every judgment and choice will influence the future and even the lives of the members beneath you. Therefore, we mustn't allow people who deeply lack experience in handling matters to advance to Sequence 5. Understandable. Audrey didn't object to it. What's the first mission? Hyven Rambus said with a smile, a simple but rather long-term mission. Every piece of feedback you provide will count towards your contributions. At this point, he sighed. The fracture between the new party and the conservative party is widening. The more conflict there is, the more divided the kingdom's internal politics will be, and that's where we step in and help. I wish that you can take note of the attitude of your father, Earl Hall, inform me of some news. Oh, whoa, no, we ain't gonna be no snitch. Inform me of some of his views towards the various bills and matters. Don't worry, this will not cause him any harm. We only wish to mend the fractures. Okay, that's good. Okay, that's good so far. His final statement was in fact not supported by logic. It was solely a promise. But with Hyven Rambus raising his right hand to the temples while on Audrey's mind island, Audrey felt that he said was very reasonable and deeply related. Floating above her mind world, she immediately snapped her senses and realized something was amiss. No harm? Something is amiss. There's definitely going to be harm. A familiar feeling. Okay. Next chapter. All right, chapter 975. A familiar feeling. How can you not cause harm to my father from knowing his trump cards? Now I see why you were laughing. Now I see why you were laughing, Charizard. That was a funny comment. Like, oh, it's not a bad choice. Oh, wait. How can you not cause harm to my father from knowing his trump cards? This would bring about negative impacts to matters that he's trying to push for object to. Floating in the mind world, Audrey looked down at her island of the consciousness. Her thoughts were so calm that it surprised her. Right on the heel of that, she suddenly realized why Hyven Rambus had directed Charon's unaliving. Why? Audrey had always been concerned about this matter. Furthermore, she had obtained information from various sources, giving her a rather clear idea of the overall picture. However, she had ultimately been stumped about the mastermind's goal. This trap seemed to be targeted at the purse strings of the Conservative Party Baron Syndras. As long as he failed to respond properly, this powerful banker would have his problems exposed at the end up handled by the official Beyonders. Organizations, however, the actual process seems to lack the panache of a high sequence of Beyonders of the spectator pathway. It was especially so when Dwayne Dantes reacted unexpectedly, causing the plan to immediately be foiled, yet there wasn't any mending of the plan. As the rather senior spectator, Audrey had long noticed the incongruity within this matter. However, it was only after hearing Hyven Rambus' words today that she realized the core of the matter. Hyven Rambus didn't care if he successfully taken down Baron Syndras and he had already accomplished his goals. It was just as he said, the new party and Conservative Party were fractured. Although Hyven Rambus claimed to be trying to mend it, his true goal was to deepen the cracks and cause them to completely fall out of each other. Why is he doing this? Audrey controlled her mind island and didn't make it show any puzzled emotions. She then realized with Hyven Rambus, I can understand your concern for the kingdom's political situation. I will work hard on this. How much are you going to read? I don't know. This might be my last chapter. We might read a little bit more. I'm not sure yet. I might take a little break after this. We'll find out right now. Just as she said that, the gloomy Hyven Rambus on the Mind Island. I'm going to skip the song. Let me just lower the volume. Just as she said that, the gloomy Ivan Rambus on the mine island lowered his right hand from his forehead. Ivan Rambus, who was sitting on the sofa in the real world, said with a gladdened smile, "You are indeed a young noble lady filled with compassion." With that said, the old gentleman lowered his right leg, which was covered by grayish-blue trousers with linen patterns. He leaned forward, frowned slightly as his eyes grew darker. Due to your identity and daily environment, you should forget about me. You will only remember Hilbert, Stefan, and Escalante. You will pass any information through him. When there are extreme pressing issues that need reporting, you will subconsciously visit me with the excess of the consulting me on some academic questions. We should stay away from this guy. When you enter my room, your lost memories will recover. As Ivan Rambus said those words, the hymn on Audrey's mind island opened his mouth and repeated the words. A rock took form and quickly plunged into the ground, sinking into the subconscious. At that moment, Audrey felt as though she had disassociated into two entities. One was a result of the mind island. She could no longer remember the appearance or the name of the elder in front of her. She only knew that she had come to Stephen Hamper's residence and met a psychology alchemist counselor where she had received the approbation of the acting method. I feel like when she goes to a Tarot Club meeting, she'll be able to get all her lost memories. Just like Derek got his lost memories when he was stuck in a time loop, she'll get her memories back. And received a new mission. Another her floated beneath the spirituality sky, acutely aware of everything that had happened. However, there wasn't much emotional changes. It was much more optimistic than gloomy. Audrey was certain that one in midair was her true self-consciousness. There, she didn't feel confounded with her as a true self. She controlled her other self and got up in the muddle. Yes, sir. After answering her, she rapidly straightened her body, and like a puppet who was being controlled by invisible strings, she walked to the door and left. The fuck? I don't like where this is going. At the instant she closed the door, that her mind of the world sky and her corresponding to the island consciousness fused as one. They were no longer different, so they're back to normal. The two entities with certain memory discrepancies instantly fused together, giving Audrey a few seconds of confusion. However, with plenty of experience in treating people and hypnotizing others, she very quickly, skillfully identified the differences. She then reconstructed every detail from before. Okay, so she remembered everything. So she did it all on her own. What powerful mind reading and hypnosis. He directly entered my body of heart and mind and even my soul to exert influence via the seal of the collective subconscious. Although Audrey had the blessings of the full angel, she felt that her recollections were like viewing old photographs. They were yellow and faded as though they were matters of happening years ago. I'll be able to do the same in the future. The blessings of Mr. Fool's angel is really impressive. I'll only inform you of father's take on unimportant matters. As Audrey mind whirled, her mood turned for the better. Whoosh. The steam locomotive spewed out copious amounts of smoke, dragged into carriages as it chuckled into backland. Why am I losing my voice? After traveling for days, Klein had finally returned to this capital of the capitals. As Dwayne Dantes, Klein wore a top hat and a formal suit while holding a golden inland cane. He slowly left the first island cabin and firmly stood on the platform. Behind him was a man with mixed blood. He was about 1.75 meters tall, and he carried two luggages. He was none other than the marionette Enzo. Of course, this winner had already changed his name to Enuni, which sounded more in line with Southern Continent traditions. In the future, he would be the go-to person to establish contact with the Southern Continent's clientele for the upstart tycoon and arms dealer Dwayne Dantes. Upstart tycoon arms dealer Dwayne Dantes. The non-crucial business would be handled by him without needing Dwayne Dantes to personally head to the east and west Ballum. Of course, this was simply disguised. In fact, Klein would be the one making the trip. He had decided to send believers to the west Ballum with the name of the sea god Calvatua and get him to represent himself. I'll lower the volume down a bit. To get him to represent himself to complete some small-scale deals. After all, the Nitz was the infamous power over the 5 seas with a bounty exceeding 10,000 pounds. Furthermore, he had close ties with Gurman Sparrow, and it easily incurred suspicions if he kept helping Dwayne Dantes. After leaving the station, Klein rode a carriage and returned to 160 Buckland Street. It was already dark by then. The street lamps on both sides of the street had already lit up. Likewise for Dwayne Dantes' residence, butler Walter and housekeeper Tangia led the mail servants as well as the gardeners of the coachmen out. They stood on both sides to welcome their employer back. After he arrived in Desi Bay and brought the train tickets, Klein had sent a telegram back to Backland informing his butler when he was returning. However, he had instructed him not to send the coachman to pick him up at the station. After all, this was an era when steam locomotives were often delayed. It wasn't impossible that its arrival would be delayed to the next morning. Glancing at his servants who stood with a standard reverent pose, Klein secretly nodded and passed through them as he signed eagerly. This does resemble the style of nobility. Even when the employer isn't around, the butler doesn't skive. When he arrived at the door, he nodded gently at Walter and Tanija before saying, "It must have been hard on you while I was away." Maybe. "It's our duty," Walter and Tanija said with a bow. Klein then turned his gaze to his valet Richardson. He realized that his good-looking mixed blood had a somewhat pale expression as he kept stealing glances at his employer's new valet Inui. Klein smirked inwardly as he nodded at him. "You did well. However, there's some business involved in the southern continent that requires Inui to handle it." "Oh yes, be Mr. Walter's assistant to help him in the gathering information for a manor outside the city." Assistant butler. Richardson was first taken aback before he replied in a pleasant surprise, "Yes, sir." With this role, it meant that he had broken free from the constraints of being a valet. He had been prompted. Walter didn't ask at the manor in detail as he seriously arranged for his employers settling in Baffin meals. After all this was done, he and Uni sent Dwayne Dantes back to the third story before he asked, "Sir, do you plan on buying a manor in the suburbs of Backland? What requirements do you have?" "Something not too expensive. Who knows how long I can use this identity for?" Klein intermittently gave his... I wonder what his new identity going to be. Oh, the prophecy? Weapons deal? "Yes, sir." What this role meant had to be broken free from the conscience of being a valet. He had been promoted. Walter didn't ask of the manor in detail as he seriously arranged for his employer setting in the Baffin meals. After all of this was done, he and Uni sent Dwayne Dantes back to the third story before he asked, "Sir, do you plan on buying a manor in the suburbs of Backland? What requirements do you have?" "Something not too expensive. Who knows how long I can use this identity?" Klein inwardly gave a self-deprecating comment before deliberating. One with a vineyard and a brewery. After completing the arms deal, he had already established himself in Backland high society and had earned a huge sum of money. Therefore, it was necessary for him to own a manor. He couldn't afford to not be capable of inviting his friends on a vacation and hunt in the suburbs when autumn and winter came. This was a fox pass that could easily make him viewed the scorn. Furthermore, the manors in Backland suburbs was rather expensive. One could purchase a huge manor with rubber trees in places like Desi Bay for £8,000 to £10,000. But here, all he wanted was a vineyard and grain farm with facilities like a brewery. I will gather the information as soon as possible," Walter replied respectfully. He knew that his employer was exhausted from his traveling, so after briefly informing him of the recent developments, he left the third story and busied himself on the other matters. With the new valet's help, Klein changed his clothes and washed up. During this process, Klein, who had gotten accustomed to his godhood, couldn't help but lampoon. "If it wasn't because of his marionette, cannot be more than 1,000 meters from me, would I have changed valets? Despite being a tycoon, I still have to serve myself." Sigh. Easy time loop moment. Yeah, we did go back up. Amidst his sighs, he dismissed Winter Uni and the adjoining room and walked to the window. He looked at the lamp-lit Backland, which resembled the stars, as he allowed his thoughts to wander. Next, my goal is MI9 Deputy Director Brigadier General Cones Kilgore. As for the captain of the Royal Guard, Viscount Stratford, I can leave him to the demoness Trissy. She has vanished from quite some time, so we need to recruit her. So we know what's the deal. I wonder what he has been Wizzy? Did I say Wizzy? I wonder what he has been busy with. I wonder if she has come up with a way to approach the Viscount. I had previously informed her that I have no other matters to tend to and wasn't free via the method she gave me. I'll later have to confirm that I'm free now and can continue our previous cooperation effort, which is why we recruit her to the Terror Club. After a while, Klein reined in her thoughts and got into bed, and then she becomes she gets the lover card of the lover. With the help of cognition, he fell deep asleep. After an unknown period of time, he suddenly opened his eyes and sensed that something had entered 160 Buckland Street. Here it comes again. Klein couldn't help but raise his hand to rub his temples. On the first day of returning to Backland, he had been awake in the middle of the night. Oh, his butler. All right, hold up. Let me pause. Let's just do overall thoughts. I'll probably end stream, and then we'll see what happens later today before episode 8 drops. I like what we're reading. See you then. Yeah, I'll see you guys soon. This was a slow burn read through. The only crazy shit we got was conversations between Nast, Medici, Einhorn, Sauron, and Is there any artwork on that, by the way? I want to look that up. Admiral Ludwil, but I'm too scared to look it up. I want to know if there's artwork with his face like that. It was so creepy. So they had separate mouths on their sides, on Ludwil's sides, that would speak. Like one would be like Einhorn Sauron, and like the other would be freaking Medici. So creepy. And then all three of them had like control over Ludwil. That's so trippy. Like they fuse together, but then they can still like innately talk separately or whatever. That's trippy, man. All right, but we'll leave it there. This was a slow burn read through. But I know it's going to be a banger volume because it only goes higher from here. Hopefully it doesn't get sad, but we'll see what happens. All right, you guys have a beautiful, amazing day or night, wherever you live. And we should hopefully be back before episode 8 drops. All right, peace, and have a beautiful day. Later, guys.